Hello guys, welcome to Potter Paradox. So in this video, we will see what if Harry discovered he owned Hogwarts and evicted Dumbledore. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Inheritance. Harry Potter sat in the cramped office at Gringotts, fingers drumming nervously on the edge of an ancient wooden desk. The summons had arrived 3 days ago, a formal letter delivered by an imposing eagle owl that refused to leave until Harry had written his acceptance. "Mr. Potter, we've been trying to reach you for years," said Bloodfong, adjusting his wire-rimmed spectacles on his pointed nose. The goblin looked irritated, shuffling through a massive folder overflowing with parchment. Annual inheritance notifications, quarterly statements, magical property assessments, all returned unopened. "I never received any letters from Gringotts before this week," Harry said, leaning forward. "Not a single one." Bloodfong stopped shuffling and looked up sharply. "That's concerning. Very concerning indeed. Mail redirection is serious magic, Mr. Potter. Especially when it involves official Gringotts correspondence." The goblin snapped his fingers, and a silver device appeared on the desk. It resembled a miniature radar dish that spun rapidly before pointing directly at Harry. "As I suspected. You've been under a mail redirection charm since November 1981. Any correspondence from financial institutions has been rerouted to your magical guardian." "Magical guardian? You mean the Dursleys?" Bloodfong laughed, a harsh sound like breaking glass. "Those muggles? Certainly not. Your magical guardian has been Albus Dumbledore." Harry's stomach dropped. "Dumbledore has been intercepting my bank statements. Why? That's what we intend to find out today." Bloodfong produced a small golden box from a drawer. "This meeting is long overdue. You turned 16 yesterday, which activates certain inheritance clauses that cannot be magically circumvented, even by Albus Dumbledore." Harry stared at the box. "What inheritance?" "I know about my parents' vault, but that school vault is merely your education fund." Bloodfong opened the box, revealing a small knife and a crystal vial. "The Potter family is ancient, Mr. Potter. And your mother's lineage held surprises of its own. Today, we determine exactly what you're entitled to." 30 minutes and 7 drops of blood later, Harry sat in stunned silence as an enchanted quill finished scratching across a seemingly endless scroll of parchment. Bloodfong was reading the results with widening eyes. "Remarkable. Simply remarkable," the goblin muttered. "We suspected, of course, but confirmation is another matter entirely." "Suspected what?" Harry asked, finding his voice again. "Mr. Potter, you are the direct descendant of Godric Gryffindor through your father's line. And through your mother, despite her muggle-born status, you carry the blood of Rowena Ravenclaw." Harry laughed nervously. "That's impossible. My mum was muggle-born. A common misconception. Squib lines often reintroduce magic generations later. Your maternal grandmother was from a squib branch of the Ravenclaw line that integrated with muggles centuries ago." Bloodfong pointed to a section of the parchment. "The magic recognized her, even if Wizarding Society did not." The implications crashed through Harry's mind. "So what does this mean, exactly?" "It means, Mr. Potter, that you own Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Harry blinked. What? The Founders' Charter is quite clear. While all 4 founders contributed to the castle's creation, ownership of the physical grounds and structure were Gryffindor's contribution. As the last living heir of both Gryffindor and Ravenclaw bloodlines, the castle and grounds belong to you." "That can't be right," Harry said, shaking his head. "Dumbledore is merely an appointed headmaster," Bloodfong interrupted. "The Board of Governors holds administrative authority granted by the Ministry, but the actual property has always belonged to Gryffindor's descendants. The Ministry has conveniently ignored this fact for centuries." Harry stood up and paced the small office. So I could just, what? Evict everyone? Fire professors? That seems insane. The extent of your control depends on whether you formally claim your inheritance through magical means. Without such claiming, your ownership is merely legal, subject to ministry regulations and historical agreements. With a magical claiming, however. Bloodfang's pointed teeth gleamed in what might have been a smile. The castle would recognize you as its master in ways that transcend mere legal ownership. Harry stopped pacing. And Dumbledore knows all this? I would be very surprised if he did not. There's more you should see. Bloodfang pulled another folder from his desk. Your parents' will was sealed by the Wisengamot after their deaths, on Dumbledore's recommendation. As your inheritance regent, I've been legally prevented from sharing its contents until now. Harry's hand shook as he reached for the document. The first page bore his parents' signatures, along with witnesses Sirius Black and Alice Longbottom, Neville's mother. His eyes scanned the text, heart pounding harder with each sentence. Under no circumstances is Harry to be placed with Petunia and Vernon Dursley, primary guardianship to Sirius Black, secondary to Alice and Frank Longbottom, tertiary to Minerva McGonagall. They never wanted me with the Dursleys, Harry whispered. It's right here in black and white. Continue reading, Mr. Potter. Harry turned the page, and his breath caught. Financial statements. Transfers. Withdrawals. What is this? Financial records of your family vaults since your parents' deaths. As you can see, significant sums have been regularly withdrawn. Harry's finger traced the transactions. Monthly payments to the Order of the Phoenix. Stipends to the Dursleys, money they'd certainly never spent on him. And personal withdrawals to Albus Dumbledore, labeled Guardian Administrative Expenses. He's been paying himself for my vault. And paying the Dursleys to keep me? Harry's voice rose dangerously. Indeed. Approximately 320,000 galleons over 15 years. He stole from me, Harry said flatly. While I wore my cousin's cast-offs and lived in a cupboard. Bloodfang nodded solemnly. The evidence suggests deliberate financial misconduct. Harry sat back down, mind racing. What can I do? Can we press charges or something? Wizarding law is complex in these matters. Magical guardians have considerable latitude. However, claiming your inheritance would immediately terminate his access and potentially allow for recovery of misappropriated funds. Harry took a deep breath. Tell me what I need to do. The Leaky Cauldron's back room wasn't exactly secure, but Harry had arrived 2 hours early to set up privacy wards. Hermione had taught him the basics last year for DA meetings, and he'd been practicing obsessively since returning to Privet Drive. Now, with Tom the barkeeper generously providing the space, anything for you, Mr. Potter, Harry waited for his friends. Hermione arrived first, bushy hair wilder than usual as she burst through the door. Harry. She threw her arms around him. Your letter was so cryptic. What's this emergency? Let's wait for the others, Harry said, checking his watch. They should be here any minute. Ron arrived next, looking taller than ever, followed shortly by Neville, who'd lost more weight and gained more confidence since Harry had last seen him. Luna drifted in last, wearing radish earrings and a serene smile. Thanks for coming, Harry said, activating the final privacy ward with a tap of his wand. The air around them shimmered briefly. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room. Harry laid out everything from his Gringotts visit, the inheritances, the will, the financial theft. With each revelation, his friend's expressions shifted from surprise to outrage. That absolute bastard, Ron finally exploded when Harry finished. Sorry, but there's no other word for it. Language, Ron, Hermione said automatically, but her heart wasn't in it. She looked pale. Harry, this changes everything we thought we knew. I've been researching the Founder's Charter, Harry said, pulling out a shrunken stack of books and restoring them with a tap of his wand. Bloodfong provided these from the Potter family vault. But I need your help, Hermione. There's too much to go through alone. Hermione was already reaching for the nearest tome, fingers trembling with academic excitement despite the circumstances. The Founder's original documents, these are incredibly rare. Focus, Hermione, Harry said gently. I need to understand exactly what powers I have over Hogwarts before I make my move. Luna tilted her head. The castle has been waiting for you, Harry. That's why it's been helping you all these years. The others looked at her curiously. Think about it, she continued dreamily. The sword of Gryffindor appearing when you needed it. The room of requirement showing up just as we needed a place to practice. Even the moving staircases, have you noticed they always take you where you need to go in emergencies? Harry stared at her. I never thought about it that way. Luna might be right, Neville said quietly. Gran always said Hogwarts was more alive than people realized. Speaking of, Harry turned to Neville, did you know our mothers were friends? Alice Longbottom was a witness to my parents' will. Neville's eyes widened. No, Gran never mentioned that. There's more. Harry hesitated. The will had a provision that if Sirius couldn't take me, I was supposed to go to your parents. We might have been raised as brothers, Neville. The room fell silent as Neville processed this. Another thing Dumbledore took from us, he finally said, his voice steady but his hands clenched into fists. Ron cleared his throat. Not to be that guy, but we need to talk strategy. Dad's been worried sick lately about ministry rumblings. Fudge may be gone, but Scrimgeour's been meeting with the Hogwarts Board of Governors all week. Something's brewing. Political moves? Hermione asked. Dad thinks they're planning some kind of educational reform after the Umbridge disaster. Ministry wants more control, not less. Ron's strategic mind, honed through countless chess games, was clearly working through angles. If you're going to claim Hogwarts, Harry, the timing matters. Do it while they're still planning, and you'll catch them flat-footed. Harry nodded, impressed. That's exactly what Bloodfong suggested. The goblins think the ministry might try to pass legislation that would override founder bloodline claims. They've apparently been working on it for decades. So we need to move quickly, Hermione concluded, already flipping through the charter documents. Give me 24 hours with these. I'll find every legal advantage we can leverage. I can help with publicity, Luna offered. Daddy would be thrilled to run a special edition of the Quibbler announcing the return of a founder's heir. It would reach people before the prophet can spin their version. Harry looked at his friends, his real family, and felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you. All of you. What are you going to do about Dumbledore? Neville asked, asking the question hanging over them all. Harry's expression hardened. First, I'm going to confront him with what I know. Then. He took a deep breath. I'm going to take back what's mine. Grimmauld Place hadn't changed, still dark, still oppressive, still reeking of centuries of dark magic. What had changed was Harry's perspective as he stood in the kitchen, facing Albus Dumbledore across the scarred wooden table. Harry, my boy, Dumbledore began, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. You wish to speak with me urgently? I must say, leaving your aunt and uncle's protection was quite reckless. Drop the act, Harry said coldly, tossing a folder onto the table. I know everything. Dumbledore didn't touch the folder. I'm afraid you'll need to be more specific. My parents will. The money you've been stealing from my vaults. The fact that you deliberately placed me with the Dursleys against my parents' explicit instructions. Harry's voice remained steady, though his magic crackled in the air around him. And most importantly, my inheritance as the heir of Gryffindor and Ravenclaw. The twinkle vanished from Dumbledore's eyes. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then, with a slight sigh, Dumbledore removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I see the goblins have been busy. Tell me, Harry, did they explain the protection your mother's sacrifice provided? The blood wards that have kept you safe these past 15 years. Safe? Harry laughed bitterly. Is that what you call it? Starved, neglected, locked in a cupboard. And then sent back year after year, even after I begged not to go. The greater good sometimes requires, don't, Harry cut him off. Don't talk to me about the greater good. Not after what I found in those financial records. He flipped open the folder, pointing to a specific entry. 10,000 galleons to the Dursleys the day you left me on their doorstep. Annual payments of 5,000 galleons since, money they clearly never spent on me. What was that for, Professor? Paying them to mistreat me? Dumbledore's expression remained maddeningly calm. The financial support was to offset the burden of raising a magical child in a Muggle household. How they chose to allocate those funds was, and what about the 50,000 galleons you transferred to yourself? Harry demanded. Guardian administrative expenses? What exactly were you administering from your cushy office while I was being worked like a house elf? A flash of something, guilt. Annoyance, crossed Dumbledore's face. The Order of the Phoenix requires funding, Harry. Your parents would have wanted, don't you dare tell me what my parents would have wanted. Harry slammed his hand on the table, and every piece of china in the kitchen cabinets rattled. They made their wishes crystal clear in their will, the will you sealed so nobody would know you were going against their explicit instructions. Dumbledore stood slowly. You are seeing these matters through the limited perspective of youth, Harry. There were factors at play beyond your understanding. I understand enough, Harry replied, also rising. I understand that you've manipulated my entire life. I understand that you've used me as a pawn in whatever grand game you're playing. And I understand that Hogwarts doesn't belong to you. The old wizard's expression darkened. Claiming the castle now would be dangerous, Harry. Lord Voldemort has been able to walk into Hogwarts practically unopposed for the past 5 years, Harry interrupted. Quirrell, the Basilisk, Pettigrew, Barty Crouch Jr., those brain things that attacked Ron. Hogwarts isn't safe under your leadership, and we both know it. And you believe you could do better? A 16-year-old boy? I couldn't possibly do worse, Harry retorted. At least I wouldn't hide dangerous artifacts in a school full of children with only puzzles protecting them. At least I'd actually expel students who set basilisks on their classmates. At least I wouldn't hire incompetent defense teachers who try to memory charm students or torture them with blood quills. Dumbledore's magic flared, pressing down on Harry like a physical weight. You're being childish, Harry. The situations you describe were complex, Harry pushed back with his own magic, surprising himself with the strength of it. The pressure around him evaporated. No, they were negligent. Criminal, even. And it stops now. Surprise flickered across Dumbledore's face at Harry's magical resistance. He recovered quickly. What exactly do you intend to do? I'm claiming my inheritance. All of it. The Potter and Black fortunes, the properties, and Hogwarts itself. Harry met the headmaster's gaze without flinching. The goblins have already started the paperwork. I'll be completing the magical claiming ritual before term starts. I strongly advise against this course of action, Harry. There are prophecies at play, destinies intertwined, more secrets. Harry shook his head in disgust. You had 15 years to be straight with me, Professor. Time's up. He turned to leave, but Dumbledore's next words stopped him cold. Your claiming of Hogwarts would disrupt protections I've spent decades establishing. Protections that may be our only advantage against Voldemort when the final battle comes. Harry looked back over his shoulder. Funny thing about claiming Hogwarts magically, according to the books, the castle's true protections can only be fully activated by a blood heir. Whatever protections you've created would be nothing compared to what the founders built in. Uncertainty crossed the old wizard's face, the first time Harry had ever seen such an expression there. It was oddly satisfying. This isn't over, Professor. But from now on, we deal as equals or not at all." With that, Harry walked out, leaving Dumbledore standing alone in the kitchen of a house that, thanks to Sirius's will, no longer belonged to the Order of the Phoenix. 3 days later, Harry stood in the center of Hogwarts' Great Hall, the summer sun streaming through stained glass windows. The castle was nearly empty, just a few professors staying through the break, most of whom were conspicuously absent. McGonagall was there, however, standing at a cautious distance with an unreadable expression. Snape lurked in the shadows by the entrance, ostensibly as security but clearly serving as Dumbledore's eyes. And Hagrid sat openly crying on a reinforced bench near the wall. "This is a mistake, Potter," McGonagall said, breaking the tense silence. "Whatever grievances you have with the headmaster, with respect, Professor, this isn't about grievances," Harry replied, unfolding an ancient parchment. "This is about birthright. And security. Security that Dumbledore has maintained for decades," she countered. Harry looked up at her sharply. "Tell that to Cedric Diggory's parents. Or to Ron Weasley, who still has scars from those brains. Or to Katie Bell, who nearly died from a cursed necklace last year." McGonagall flinched but didn't back down. "And you believe you can do better? A student who hasn't even completed his newts." "I believe Hogwarts deserves better than it's gotten," Harry said simply. "Now, I need to concentrate." He turned away from her, focusing on the parchment Blood Fong had provided. The ritual was supposedly simple, a few drops of blood on the Founder's seal embedded in the center of the Great Hall floor, followed by a declaration of claiming. Harry knelt and placed his palm against the stone floor. "I seek the Founder's seal," he said clearly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the stones beneath his hand began to shift, rearranging themselves until they formed a circular pattern with 4 distinct quadrants. In the center, a small depression appeared, just large enough for a few drops of blood. "Merlin preserve us," McGonagall whispered. Harry removed the small knife Blood Fong had given him and, without hesitation, pricked his finger. 3 drops of blood fell into the depression in the seal. "I, Harry James Potter, heir of Godric Gryffindor and Rowena Ravenclaw, claim this castle and grounds as my birthright. I claim Hogwarts." The blood sank into the stone, which began to glow with golden light. The light spread outward, following the mortar lines between stones, racing across the floor and up the walls. Within seconds, the entire Great Hall was traced with glowing golden lines. Harry felt it then, a presence, ancient and aware, brushing against his consciousness. At last, the presence seemed to say, though not in words. "Heir of my creators. Welcome home." The castle was alive in a way Harry had never imagined. He could feel every corridor, every classroom, every secret passage. He could sense the dormitories, the kitchens, the grounds to the edge of the forbidden forest. And he could feel the wards, weakened, compromised, and patched over centuries with inferior magic. "The wards," he gasped, eyes wide. "They're full of holes." "Impossible," Snape snapped from his position by the door. "Dumbledore maintains those wards personally." But Harry wasn't listening. He was communing with the castle, learning centuries of secrets in moments. He saw the original ward scheme, a masterpiece of magical engineering, far beyond anything modern wizards could create. And he saw how it had been systematically dismantled over centuries, replaced with lesser protections that required less power but provided only a fraction of the security. "The original wards could have kept Voldemort out entirely," Harry murmured. "They could have detected Quirrell's possession, prevented the chamber from being opened, blocked the fake Moody." As he spoke, the golden light pulsed brighter. The castle was responding to his awareness, his concern, his determination to restore what had been lost. "Potter, what are you doing?" McGonagall's voice seemed distant through Harry's connection with Hogwarts. "Fixing what's broken," he replied absently. With what felt like a mental push, Harry channeled his magic into the castle's core. The golden light flared blindingly bright, and the entire structure shuddered. Dust rained down from the enchanted ceiling as centuries-old magic reactivated, flowing through the foundation and walls like lifeblood returning to a body. In his mind's eye, Harry saw the wards rise, layer upon layer of interlocking protections against dark magic, against ill intent, against deception and danger. They extended upward and downward, a dome of magical energy that encompassed the castle and grounds completely. And then, abruptly, an alarm blared, a sound like 1,000 phoenix calls merging into one deafening cry. "What's happening?" Hagrid shouted over the noise, rising to his feet. The castle provided the answer directly to Harry's mind: intruder detected. Malevolent intent. Headmaster's tower. Harry's eyes snapped open. Dumbledore is attempting to breach the wards. Without conscious thought, Harry found himself striding toward the grand staircase, McGonagall and Snape hurrying to keep up. "Potter, stop this madness!" Snape called after him. "You have no idea what forces you're interfering with." But Harry kept moving, the castle itself guiding him, staircases shifting to create the most direct path to the headmaster's tower. He could feel Dumbledore's magic now, powerful and frustrated, pushing against the newly restored wards. When they reached the gargoyle guarding the headmaster's office, Harry didn't need a password. The stone guardian bowed deeply and leapt aside. "The guardian has never done that for anyone but the headmaster," McGonagall said faintly. "I am Hogwarts master now," Harry replied, stepping onto the moving spiral staircase. "Not its headmaster." At the top of the stairs, they found Dumbledore surrounded by swirling magical energy, wand raised as he attempted to modify the ward structure. He turned as they entered, his face tight with concentration. "Harry, you must stop this. The wards are rejecting my adjustments." "They're not your wards to adjust anymore," Harry said calmly. "Hogwarts has accepted my claim." "You don't understand what you've done," Dumbledore insisted. "The original ward scheme is too rigid. It will prevent necessary operations, order members coming and going, certain educational activities. It will prevent anyone with ill intent from entering," Harry corrected him. "Which explains why you're having trouble right now." Dumbledore's eyes flashed dangerously. "You dare suggest the castle judge's intent, not me," Harry interrupted. "And it's finding yours wanting." As if responding to his words, the magical whirlwind around Dumbledore intensified. Objects began flying off shelves, and the portraits of former headmasters and headmistresses were shouting in alarm. "Harry Potter is the rightful heir. The castle has chosen. Stand down, Albus, before you trigger the ejection protocols." Dumbledore ignored the portraits, raising his wand higher. "I cannot allow centuries of careful management to be undone by a child's tantrum, Harry. Forgive me. Soper Castellum." A blast of silver light shot from Dumbledore's wand toward the ceiling, a spell Harry had never seen before. But before it could connect, a shield of golden energy materialized, absorbing the spell completely. The castle's presence in Harry's mind turned cold. Attempted sabotage detected. Ejection protocols activated. "Professor, stop fighting!" Harry shouted. "The castle is..." Before he could finish, the floor beneath Dumbledore's feet transformed into a smooth chute. With a look of utter surprise, the greatest wizard of the age disappeared downward, his wand clattering to the floor where he had stood. McGonagall gasped. "Where did he go?" Harry received the answer mentally. "Outside the grounds. The castle ejected him beyond the ward boundaries." "Impossible," Snape breathed, looking genuinely shaken. "No force should be capable of removing Albus Dumbledore against his will. The castle was designed with safeguards against anyone who would harm it," Harry explained, information flowing into his mind from the castle itself. "Even the headmaster." He walked to the window and looked out across the grounds toward the main gates. In the distance, a figure in purple robes was picking himself up off the ground, looking back at the castle with what Harry imagined must be stunned disbelief. "So it's done," McGonagall said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "You've evicted Albus Dumbledore from Hogwarts. It wasn't my intention, Harry admitted. I just wanted the castle to be secure. To be what it was meant to be. And what happens now, Potter? Who will run the school? Harry turned to face her. The school still needs a headmistress, Professor McGonagall. If you're willing. Her eyebrows shot up. Me? But Albus will undoubtedly continue his work against Voldemort, Harry finished for her. But Hogwarts needs leadership focused on students' education and safety, not on fighting external wars. McGonagall studied him for a long moment. You've changed, Potter. I've grown up, Harry corrected her. Faster than I should have had to. But I'm still a student, and I still need my teachers. He gestured around the office. This could be yours, if you want it. And Severus? She asked, glancing at the potions master, who remained stone-faced by the door. Professor Snape's position depends on his intentions toward the students, Harry said, meeting the man's dark gaze directly. The castle will know if he truly wishes to protect us or merely serve his own ends. Snape's lip curled. Always so certain of yourself, Potter. Just like your father. Actually, I'm certain of Hogwarts, Harry replied evenly. And it seems Hogwarts has reservations about you, Professor. The castle is offering to show me your teaching records, every interaction with every student for the past 15 years. Should I accept that offer? Something like alarm flickered in Snape's eyes. That would be an unconscionable invasion of privacy. I agree. Which is why I'll decline, for now. Harry turned back to McGonagall. There will need to be changes, Professor. Real changes. No more dangerous objects hidden behind simple puzzles. No more basilisks in the plumbing. No more leaving students vulnerable to possessed teachers or Death Eater infiltrators. McGonagall straightened her spine. If, and I emphasize if, I were to consider the position, would require autonomy in educational matters. Granted, so long as student safety remains the priority. Harry walked to the large desk that had been Dumbledore's and picked up the wand that had clattered there. I believe this should be returned to its owner. As if summoned by his words, Fawkes appeared in a flash of flame, trilling softly. Hello, Fawkes, Harry said, surprised. I thought you'd have gone with Dumbledore. The phoenix trilled again, more insistently, and Harry understood. You're bound to the headmaster's position, not to Dumbledore personally. Fawkes bobbed his magnificent head, then extended a talon toward Dumbledore's wand. Will you take this back to him? And tell him. Harry paused, considering his words carefully. Tell him I'm sorry it came to this, but Hogwarts has made its choice. The phoenix accepted the wand gently in one talon, regarded Harry with surprising warmth, and disappeared in another burst of flame. Well, McGonagall said after a moment of silence. I suppose we have preparations to make before term begins. We do, Harry agreed. Starting with a complete security assessment. The castle is already showing me vulnerabilities that need addressing. And Dumbledore? The Order? The Ministry? They won't simply accept this change of power, Potter. Harry smiled grimly. I'm counting on it, Professor. In fact, I'm preparing for it. And in his mind, Hogwarts hummed with approval, already strengthening its defenses against the storm to come. Chapter 2, The Resistance. The news exploded across Wizarding Britain like a Weasley's wildfire whiz-bang. Harry Potter had claimed Hogwarts. Harry Potter had evicted Albus Dumbledore. Harry Potter had upended the entire magical educational system overnight. Harry sat at the kitchen table in 12, Grimmauld Place, surrounded by the morning's papers. The Daily Prophet's headline screamed, Potter coup at Hogwarts, boy WHO lived seizes school. Rita Skeeter's byline promised, exclusive insights into Potter's power-mad grab. This is actually better than I expected, Hermione said, scanning the article. They're painting you as unstable and power-hungry, but they haven't questioned your legal right to the castle. They can't, Ron mumbled through a mouthful of toast. Dad says the ministry's legal department is in chaos. Turns out the founder's inheritance magic trumps pretty much everything in wizarding law. Harry pushed aside the papers and unfolded a letter that had arrived by Ministry Owl an hour earlier. Scrimgeour wants a meeting. Today. Trap, Ron said immediately. Obviously, Harry agreed. But ignoring the Minister of Magic isn't an option. You'll need backup, Hermione insisted. Not just us, adult allies with political standing. Already on it, Harry replied, sliding another letter across the table. Augusta Longbottom has agreed to accompany me as my proxy on the Wizengamot. Apparently, she's been waiting decades for someone to challenge Dumbledore's stranglehold on Hogwarts. Ron whistled. Neville's Gran is scary good in political fights. Dad says she once made Lucius Malfoy stutter in open session. A soft pop announced Dobby's arrival. The house elf wore a miniature version of Hogwarts robes with an elaborate crest showing all 4 houses surrounding a stylized P. Master Harry Potter, sir. Hogwarts Elves is completing the security sweep you requested. Dobby bounced excitedly. We is finding 7 cursed objects, 3 hidden spy portraits, and 1 secret entrance not on the Marauders map. Brilliant work, Dobby, Harry said. Are the living quarters ready for the staff meeting this afternoon? Yes, sir. The castle has been helping us, sir. Hogwarts be very happy to have her true master back. Dobby's ears wiggled with delight. The Room of Requirement has expanded its capabilities too. It's showing us rooms even the elves didn't know about. After Dobby popped away, Hermione gave Harry a searching look. How does it feel? Having an entire castle respond to you? Harry considered the question. Like finding a piece of myself I never knew was missing. Hogwarts doesn't just obey me, it works with me. Like we're partners. Wicked, Ron breathed. Can you make it do anything you want? Like, turn all the Slytherin dorms pink or something? Ronald. Hermione scolded while Harry laughed. The castle has its own personality, Harry explained. It'll implement changes I request if they make sense, but it has opinions about what's appropriate. A sentient castle with opinions, Hermione mused. The magical theory implications are staggering. Harry stood up, checking his watch. We can discuss magical theory later. Right now, I've got a minister to meet and a school to prepare. Term starts in 3 weeks, and we've got a revolution to organize. The ministry atrium buzzed with activity and whispers as Harry strode through with Augusta Longbottom at his side. The formidable witch wore formal plum-colored Wizengamot robes and carried a red handbag that Harry strongly suspected contained more than just a handkerchief and spare change. Remember, Mr. Potter, Augusta murmured as they approached the security desk, Scrimgeour was head Auror before becoming minister. He thinks like a law enforcer, not a politician. Direct confrontation works better than manipulation with him. No wand weighing today, Mr. Potter, said the security wizard, looking nervous. Minister's orders. You're to proceed directly to conference room A. Thank you, Harry said politely, noting how the man's eyes kept darting to Harry's scar, then to Augusta, then back to Harry. They were escorted by a junior assistant who barely looked older than Harry himself. As they walked, Augusta kept up a running commentary on the ministry officials they passed, most of whom seemed desperate to avoid eye contact. That was Wilbert Kettleburn, head of magical transportation. Coward, but honest. There goes Amelia Bones, she's solid, you can trust her. Don't look now, but Dolores Umbridge just ducked into that office. Still bandaged from her centaur encounter, I see. Conference room A turned out to be an imposing chamber with a long ebony table surrounded by high-backed chairs. Minister Scrimgeour stood at the far end, leaning on his walking stick. He wasn't alone. Cornelius Fudge sat to his right, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his pinstriped suit. And to Scrimgeour's left, wearing midnight blue robes spangled with silver stars, sat Albus Dumbledore. Ah, the gang's all here, Harry said dryly. Scrimgeour's lion-like features remained impassive. Mr. Potter. Madam Longbottom. Thank you for coming. Minister. Augusta inclined her head regally. I trust you understand that Mr. Potter appears today under my legal protection as his proxy on the Wisengamot. Any attempt to detain, question under veritaserum, or otherwise interfere with his liberty will constitute a breach of Wisengamot privilege. Fudge sputtered. Now see here, no one is suggesting any such thing, Scrimgeour cut him off smoothly. Please, be seated. We have much to discuss. Harry took a seat directly across from Dumbledore, whose blue eyes watched him with an unreadable expression. The tension in the room thickened. Mr. Potter, Scrimgeour began without preamble, you have created an unprecedented situation. The Ministry has overseen Hogwarts education for centuries through the Board of Governors. The Ministry has permitted the Board of Governors to administer Hogwarts, Augusta corrected. That arrangement has always been contingent upon the consent of the property's legal owner, a mere formality until now, as no confirmed heir had come forward to press their claim. Precisely the point, Scrimgeour said. Mr. Potter's claim has disrupted a functional system that serves thousands of students. Functional? Harry raised an eyebrow. Minister, in the past 5 years alone, Hogwarts has seen a possessed teacher, a basilisk petrifying students, a mass murderer breaking in repeatedly, an imposter teacher kidnapping students, and a ministry employee torturing children with blood quills. I'd hardly call that functional. Fudge turned purple. Outrageous accusations, documented facts, Augusta interrupted coldly. Each incident reported and subsequently buried by the ministry or the headmaster. I have copies of all relevant evidence, courtesy of concerned parents. Dumbledore finally spoke. Harry, no one disputes that there have been security incidents. But disrupting the entire educational system weeks before term begins risks chaos that will harm the very students you wish to protect. Harry met his former mentor's gaze. I'm not disrupting the educational system, headmaster. I'm securing it. The professors remain in place, including Headmistress McGonagall. Classes will proceed as scheduled. The only difference is that Hogwarts will now be safe. And who defines safe, Potter? Scrimgeour demanded. You. A 16-year-old boy with no educational experience or qualifications. Hogwarts itself defines safety, Harry replied calmly. The founders built safeguards that have been systematically dismantled over centuries. I'm simply restoring what should never have been removed. The original protections were deemed too restrictive for modern educational needs, Dumbledore said gently. They prevented certain teaching methods, restricted academic freedom, they prevented people with ill intent from entering the castle, Harry interrupted. They stopped dark artifacts from crossing the threshold. They alerted the headmaster to possession, polyjuice use, and malicious enchantments. Tell me, Professor, why exactly were those protections too restrictive? A subtle flush crept up Dumbledore's neck. The complexities of magical education sometimes require, the truth, Albus, Augusta cut in sharply. For once, give the boy the truth. Dumbledore sighed. The original protections would have prevented certain, necessary risks in the fight against Voldemort. The room went silent. You compromised the safety of hundreds of children to set up your chess pieces against Voldemort, Harry said quietly. You turned Hogwarts into bait. I did what was necessary to prepare for a war we all knew would come, Dumbledore replied, his voice hardening slightly. A war we are now fighting. Not at the expense of children, Harry said, standing up. Not anymore. Scrimgeour tapped the table with his wand, commanding attention. Philosophical disagreements aside, we must address practical matters. The Board of Governors demands restoration of their authority. The Ministry requires oversight of educational standards. And parents need reassurance that their children will receive proper instruction. All reasonable concerns, Harry acknowledged. Which is why I've prepared this. He withdrew a scroll from his robes and placed it on the table. The parchment unfurled itself, revealing a detailed document titled Charter of Governance for Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. A new charter. Dumbledore leaned forward with undisguised interest. One that balances property rights with educational needs, Harry explained. The Board of Governors will continue to oversee curriculum standards, but security and protection of students falls under the direct authority of Hogwarts itself, through me, for now, and through any heir who comes after me. Scrimgeour skimmed the document. This would require significant ministry concessions. In exchange for equally significant guarantees, Augusta pointed out. Including stable funding, transparent oversight, and the continuation of Hogwarts' educational mission. And if we refuse? Fudge asked sullenly. Harry shrugged. Then Hogwarts operates independently under its original charter, which gives me complete authority over all aspects of the school, without any ministry involvement whatsoever. You wouldn't dare, Fudge spluttered. I already have, Harry replied. The question is whether you want a partnership or an adversary. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled for the first time since Harry had entered the room. Despite himself, Harry felt a flicker of their old connection, the student and teacher who respected each other's minds, if not always each other's methods. Most impressive, Harry, Dumbledore said softly. You've learned the art of political leverage quite effectively. I had good teachers, Harry replied. Some taught by example, others by cautionary tale. Scrimgeour rapped the table again. We will need time to review these terms. The Wisengamot must be consulted, legal precedents examined. Of course, Harry said reasonably. You have 1 week. After that, Hogwarts opens under its original charter, and the ministry loses all input into its operation. Forever. As negotiations continued, Harry found himself oddly energized. For the first time in his life, he was fighting on ground of his own choosing, with advantages of his own making. Whatever came next, he wouldn't be merely reacting to Dumbledore's plans or Voldemort's attacks. For once, Harry Potter was writing his own story. The Hogwarts Express gleamed scarlet in the September sunshine as students poured onto platform 9 3/4. The usual chaos of tearful goodbyes and forgotten trunks was amplified by anxious parents huddled in whispering groups, many clutching Daily Prophet editions with increasingly hysterical headlines about the Potter regime. Harry watched from a disillusioned position near the engine, Neville standing guard beside him. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of preparations, negotiations, and increasingly desperate attempts by various factions to regain control of Hogwarts. The ministry had ultimately signed Harry's charter, but not without extracting concessions of their own, including a 3-person educational quality assurance team that would reside at the school. Malfoy just arrived, Neville murmured. Looks smug. Harry nodded, unsurprised. His fathers probably told him to expect this all to blow over once Voldemort makes his move. Should we stop him boarding? No, Harry decided. The castle will handle security. Let's see who else shows up. As if on cue, a familiar group of redheads appeared through the barrier. The Weasley family looked unusually somber, Arthur glancing nervously around the platform while Molly clutched Ginny's shoulders protectively. They haven't spoken to me since it happened, Harry said quietly. They'll come around, Neville replied with surprising confidence. Once they see what you're really doing. The whistle blew, signaling 5 minutes until departure. Harry tapped his enchanted galleon, an improved version of the DA communication device, and felt it grow warm in confirmation. Throughout the platform, members of Harry's security team checked their own coins and moved into position. Luna's in place at the rear guard position, Neville reported, checking his coin. Hermione's aboard monitoring the prefect carriage. Ron's. He frowned. Ron's signal is weak. He might be having second thoughts. He'll do what's right, Harry said, though his stomach tightened. The Weasleys' divided loyalties had been the most painful consequence of his confrontation with Dumbledore. Let's board. Front carriage, as planned. They moved quickly through the crowd, Harry maintaining his disillusionment charm until they reached the private compartment they'd prepared. Inside, the space had been magically expanded and reinforced with protective enchantments. Maps of Hogwarts and the surrounding areas were pinned to one wall, while a modified version of the Marauders map showed the entire train in real time. Everyone's boarding, Harry noted, watching the tiny labeled dots converge on the train. No Order members on the platform except for the Weasleys. And Tonks, Neville pointed to a dot labeled N, Tonks moving alongside the train. But she's assigned as Order protection, not Order business. The train whistle blew again, and with a lurch, the Hogwarts Express began to move. Harry felt a moment of nostalgia, this familiar journey now transformed into a security operation. He wondered briefly if he'd gone too far, if the weight of responsibility he'd taken on would crush the last vestiges of his youth. Then he remembered Cedric. Sirius. All the casualties of Dumbledore's greater good philosophy. No. This was necessary. This was right. The compartment door slid open, and Ron Weasley stood awkwardly in the entrance, still wearing his muggle clothes rather than school robes. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey," Harry replied, heart pounding. "Wasn't sure you'd come." Ron stepped inside and closed the door. "Mom and Dad think I'm making a huge mistake. Bill and Charlie are staying neutral. Percy, the Git, is fully with the Ministry. The twins." He smiled slightly. "The twins think you're bloody brilliant and want exclusive selling rights for their products at Hogwarts. And you?" Harry asked quietly. Ron looked him straight in the eye. "I think you're mental, taking on Dumbledore, the Ministry, and you know who all at once." He paused, then grinned. "But someone's got to watch your back while you do it, right?" The tension broke. Harry laughed, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. "Right. Speaking of which," a silver light flashed on the enchanted map, indicating a security alert. 3 dots in the last carriage were labeled D. Malfoy, G. Goyle, and B. Zabini, all clustered around a smaller dot labeled C. Creevy. "Trouble in carriage 7, Neville said unnecessarily. Harry checked his watch. "Right on schedule. Malfoy's nothing if not predictable. Ron, you're with me. Neville, monitor from here and alert Luna to circle around from the rear." The train swayed as Harry and Ron made their way through the carriages, passing compartments full of staring students who fell silent as they spotted Harry. News of his presence aboard spread like fiend fire, kids pointing, whispering, some looking frightened, others excited. "Bit different from our first train ride," Ron muttered. Harry smiled grimly. "Everything's different now." They reached carriage 7 just as raised voices became audible. Harry motioned for Ron to hang back slightly, then slid the compartment door open without knocking. Inside, Draco Malfoy had Colin Creevy pressed against the window, wand at the smaller boy's throat. Goyle blocked the exit while Zabini lounged casually in a seat, looking bored. "Think things have changed, Mudblood?" Malfoy was saying. "Potter's little power trip won't last the week. Then we'll see who, problem here?" Harry asked mildly. Malfoy spun around, not releasing Colin. His pale face flushed when he saw Harry, but he quickly recovered his sneer. "Private conversation, Potter. Nothing that concerns the so-called Master of Hogwarts." Harry leaned against the doorframe. "See, that's where you're wrong, Malfoy. Everything that happens to Hogwarts students concerns me now." He nodded toward Colin. "Let him go." "Or what? We're not at school yet. You have no authority on this train." "Actually," Harry said conversationally, "the Hogwarts Express falls under the school's jurisdiction according to the original charter." "Which means?" He flicked his wrist, and his wand appeared in his hand. "I don't have to ask twice." Malfoy's eyes darted between Harry and Ron, calculating odds. 2 on 3, Potter. Not great math, even for a half-blood. 3 on 3, came Luna's dreamy voice as she appeared behind Ron. Though I suppose we could count the Raxperts around Goyle's head as additional combatants. Malfoy released Colin with a shove. Fine. Have your little victory. It changes nothing. When the Dark Lord, when Voldemort makes his move, he'll find Hogwarts a very different place than he expects, Harry interrupted, ignoring the collective flinch at the name. You might want to mention that in your next letter home, Draco. Colin scrambled to Harry's side, camera clutched protectively against his chest. Thank you, Harry. I was just taking photos of the countryside when they cornered me. Go find a compartment with other DA members, Harry told him kindly. Luna, make sure he gets there safely. As Luna led Colin away, Harry turned back to Malfoy. One more thing. When we arrive at Hogwarts, every student will pass through new security measures. Dark marks will be detected. He let that sink in. Just something to consider. He closed the compartment door on Malfoy's suddenly pale face, feeling Ron's curious gaze. Can the castle really detect dark marks? Ron asked quietly as they headed back. No idea, Harry admitted. But Malfoy doesn't know that. Ron laughed. Brilliant. Psychological warfare. I learned from the best, Harry replied, thinking of Dumbledore's decades of careful manipulations. Sometimes the threat of discovery is more effective than the discovery itself. As they continued through the train, Harry paused to talk with students who called out to him, answering questions and quelling rumors. It was strange being both a returning student and the castle's master, but he found the role coming more naturally than expected. What happens when we get to Hogwarts? A nervous second-year Hufflepuff asked. Is it true you've banned all Slytherins? Harry shook his head. No house will be banned. Hogwarts was built for all 4 founders, and that won't change. But rules will be enforced equally for everyone, and safety comes first. Will Professor Dumbledore come back? Asked another student. Professor Dumbledore has other responsibilities now, Harry replied diplomatically. Professor McGonagall is your headmistress. By the time they returned to their compartment, Harry had spoken with dozens of students. The mood on the train seemed to be shifting from anxiety to cautious curiosity. Neville showed them the security map, where most areas now glowed green for normal activity. So far, so good, Harry said, dropping into a seat. But the real test comes when we reach Hogsmeade Station. The train slowed as it approached Hogsmeade, and Harry felt the castle's awareness brush against his mind, a gentle welcome that grew stronger as they neared the school grounds. The Hogwarts connection had been maintaining itself even at a distance, but proximity strengthened it considerably. They're waiting, he said suddenly, eyes snapping open. Ministry officials at the station. And someone from the Order, Kingsley, I think. How do you know? Ron asked, impressed. The castle knows. The wards extend farther than people realize. Harry stood, checking his enchanted galleon. Alert the team. Protocol 3. Protocol 3 meant dispersed arrival. Their security volunteers would exit the train in small groups, looking like ordinary students until they reached their assigned positions. Harry, as the most recognizable, would disembark last under disillusionment. The train ground to a halt. Through the window, Harry could see the platform crowded not just with the usual Hogwarts staff but with several official-looking wizards in ministry robes. Hagrid stood calling for first years as always, but his normally cheerful face looked strained. Hermione's in position near the carriages, Neville reported, checking his coin. Luna's with the first years. Good. Ron, you go ahead with the main group. Neville, wait 3 minutes, then follow with the second group. I'll come last and meet you at the gates. Ron clapped him on the shoulder. Be careful, mate. Remember, you're too important to risk getting caught now. Harry nodded, oddly touched by his friend's concern. As the compartment emptied, he cast his disillusionment charm and slipped into the corridor, moving carefully through the crowd of departing students. On the platform, he spotted Kingsley Shacklebolt scanning the disembarking students with professional intensity. Nearby, Dolores Umbridge, apparently recovered from her centaur encounter, stood with Percy Weasley and two Aurors Harry didn't recognize. They appeared to be checking names against a list. "Last call for students," the conductor shouted. "All off for Hogwarts." Harry waited until the final stragglers had left, then slipped out onto the nearly empty platform. He was halfway to the carriages when a voice called out. "Wait!" Detection spell shows someone still on the platform under concealment. Harry froze as Kingsley raised his wand, casting a wide area revealing charm. The disillusionment flickered, and Harry knew he had seconds before he was exposed. Instead of fighting it, he released the charm himself, appearing suddenly in plain view. "Mr. Potter," Umbridge's sickly sweet voice made his skin crawl. "How unsurprising to find you skulking about under invisibility spells. Old habits die hard, it seems." "Madam Umbridge," Harry replied coolly. "I wasn't aware the senior undersecretary had been demoted to train inspection duty." Her smile tightened. "I am here as head of the new Educational Quality Assurance Team. The minister feels that recent disruptions warrant increased oversight." "How convenient." Harry glanced at Kingsley, whose expression revealed nothing. "And the Aurors?" "Standard security procedure," Kingsley said neutrally. "Given the current climate." "Mr. Potter," Percy stepped forward, officious as ever, "I am required to inform you that under Educational Decree 37, issued this morning, all major changes to Hogwarts operations must receive prior ministry approval. This includes any modifications to the castle, grounds, or security protocols." Harry raised an eyebrow. "Interesting timing. I don't recall that decree being included in our negotiations." "Circumstances change," Umbridge simpered. "The minister has concerns about student safety under such inexperienced leadership." "Student safety," Harry repeated. "Like having them write lines with blood quills?" Umbridge's face flushed an ugly shade of purple. "Those allegations were never proven, because Dumbledore prevented a formal investigation," Harry finished for her. "Another failure of the previous administration that won't be repeated." He turned to Percy. "You can inform the minister that any decrees affecting Hogwarts must be approved by the castle's master under the new charter he signed. His signature on that document magically binds the ministry to those terms." Percy's ears reddened in a way that painfully reminded Harry of Ron. "Now see here, Potter, I've seen quite enough," Harry interrupted, starting toward the carriages. "If you'll excuse me, I have students waiting." Kingsley stepped into his path, expression regretful but determined. "I'm afraid I need to escort you to the castle, Harry." "Minister's orders." Harry met the Auror's eyes. He'd always respected Kingsley, even knowing the man's loyalty to Dumbledore. "Are you detaining me, Auror Shacklebolt?" "Merely ensuring your safety," Kingsley replied smoothly. "And that of the students." Harry considered his options. Making a scene would undermine the calm authority he'd been trying to project. Yet submitting to a ministry escort would signal weakness. The decision was made for him when he felt the castle's magic surge through their connection. The nearest thestral-drawn carriage suddenly broke from its queue, trotting directly to where Harry stood. The door swung open of its own accord. "It seems Hogwarts has sent my transportation," Harry said with a slight smile. "You're welcome to accompany me, Auror Shacklebolt, but I will not be detained." Umbridge stepped forward, wand half raised. "This defiance of ministry authority will not," the Thestral snorted loudly, pawing the ground with sudden aggression. Umbridge jumped back, eyes widening in fear at the creature she couldn't see but could sense. Kingsley, ever the professional, merely nodded. "I'll ride with you, if that's acceptable." "Of course," Harry replied, climbing into the carriage. As Kingsley joined him, the door closed firmly, and the Thestral took off at a brisk pace, bypassing the regular carriage line. Kingsley studied Harry with newfound interest. "The castle responds to you directly. Just like the rumors said." Hogwarts was designed to work with its rightful owner, Harry said. The connection was always there, just dormant. And what exactly do you plan to do with this connection, Harry? Keep students safe. Provide the education they deserve. Harry met the Auror's gaze directly. Stop letting children be sacrificed in adult wars. Something flickered across Kingsley's normally impassive face, respect, perhaps, or recognition. Admirable goals. But you've made powerful enemies. I've had powerful enemies since I was 1 year old, Harry replied. At least now I have the resources to fight back. They rode in silence for a moment before Kingsley spoke again, his voice lower. Dumbledore believes you've made a dangerous mistake. That claiming the castle has accelerated certain prophecies. Dumbledore had 15 years to be straight with me, Harry said, an edge creeping into his voice. He chose secrecy and manipulation instead. Now I'm choosing a different path. As they crested the hill, Hogwarts came into view, its towers silhouetted against the darkening sky. Harry felt the castle's welcome wash over him, stronger than ever. Through their connection, he sensed the other students arriving, the staff preparing in the Great Hall, and, most surprisingly, the building's own excitement at the changes underway. Look, Harry said suddenly, pointing. The castle windows glowed not with their usual golden light, but with a brilliant white radiance that seemed to pulse in time with Harry's heartbeat. As they watched, the light spread, tracing the outlines of towers and walls until the entire structure shimmered with magical energy. What's happening? Kingsley asked, awe overcoming professional reserve. Hogwarts is waking up, Harry replied simply. Really waking up, after centuries of half-sleep. The carriage rolled through the gates, which swung open at their approach without any visible signal. Harry could feel the wards acknowledging him, strengthening with his presence on the grounds. Ahead, students were disembarking from their carriages, pointing and exclaiming at the glowing castle. I should warn you, Harry said as they approached the entrance, the castle will scan everyone who enters tonight. Those with harmful intent towards students won't be permitted inside. Kingsley raised an eyebrow. Including ministry officials? Aurors? Including everyone, Harry confirmed. Myself included, if my intentions ever change. The carriage stopped at the base of the stone steps. As Harry stepped out, he felt a surge of magic around him, the castle's equivalent of an enthusiastic embrace. The sensation was so unexpected and oddly comforting that he found himself smiling. Students were gathering at the entrance, watching wide-eyed as the doors to the castle, massive oak structures bound with iron, began to open of their own accord. No Filch scowling in the entranceway this year. Instead, the entrance hall beyond glowed with welcoming light, and the air itself seemed charged with positive energy. Harry spotted Ron, Hermione, Neville, and Luna positioned strategically around the crowd. They nodded, confirming all was well with their assigned groups. Taking a deep breath, Harry climbed the steps and turned to face the assembled students. Welcome to Hogwarts, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the crowd without magical amplification, another gift from the castle. Things will be different this year. Safer. More focused on actual education. But the most important traditions remain. In a few minutes, you'll enter the Great Hall for the welcoming feast and sorting. First years, please gather with Professor Hagrid. He nodded toward the half-giant, who gave a nervous wave. Before we enter, Harry continued, I want to be clear about one thing. Hogwarts was founded to teach magic to all worthy students, regardless of blood status, family background, or house affiliation. That mission has sometimes been forgotten. Tonight, we reclaim it. He turned and walked through the doors, feeling the castle's magic ripple outward. As each student approached the threshold, a subtle shimmer in the air, visible only to Harry through his connection, assessed their intentions. Most passed through unimpeded, the magic merely brushing against them like a gentle breeze. A few, mostly older Slytherins, but also a surprising Ravenclaw 7th year and 2 Gryffindors Harry didn't know well, triggered a deeper scan. The castle showed Harry flashes of their thoughts, plans to sabotage, spy, or harm others. Not enough to prevent entry, but enough to flag them for monitoring. Only one student, Draco Malfoy, came to a complete stop at the threshold, the castle's magic flaring visibly around him. The blonde Slytherin pushed forward with increasing desperation, but couldn't cross the invisible barrier. "What is the meaning of this?" came Professor Snape's voice as he swept down the entrance hall, black robes billowing. "Why is Mr. Malfoy being prevented from entering?" Harry approached calmly, aware of the watching crowd. "The castle has detected hostile intent, Professor. Specifically, plans to harm other students." Malfoy's face contorted with rage. "That's a lie. You've rigged these so-called wards to keep out Slytherins." "Actually," Harry replied, "several Slytherins have already entered without issue, including your friends Crabbe and Goyle. The wards don't care about house affiliation, only about intention." Snape's dark eyes bored into Harry's. "This is absurd, Potter. You cannot possibly know Mr. Malfoy's intentions." "I don't," Harry said truthfully. "But Hogwarts does." He placed his hand on the stone archway, connecting more deeply with the castle's awareness. "Show me exactly what it detected." The information flowed into his mind. Malfoy had been tasked with placing cursed objects around the school, a necklace that would kill anyone who touched it, a bottle of poisoned mead meant for a specific target, and worst of all, plans to create a passage for Death Eaters to enter later in the year. Harry kept his expression neutral, though his stomach churned. Mr. Malfoy has been given assignments that would result in student deaths. The castle won't permit his entry while those intentions remain. Malfoy's face went from red to white in an instant. "You can't know that. You're making it up." "A vanishing cabinet," Harry said quietly, so only Malfoy and Snape could hear. "One here, one at Borgin and Burke's. A cursed necklace. Poisoned mead. Ring any bells, Draco?" The look of utter shock on Malfoy's face confirmed everything. Snape's expression became, if possible, even more inscrutable. "Those are serious accusations, Potter," Snape said, voice dangerously soft. "Not accusations, facts," Harry replied. Facts the castle pulled directly from Malfoy's mind as he tried to cross the threshold with murderous intent. Malfoy seemed to collapse in on himself, panic replacing his usual arrogance. "You don't understand," he whispered. "He'll kill my mother if I don't." "That's enough, Mr. Malfoy," Snape cut him off sharply. To Harry, he said, "If what you claim is true, what do you intend to do?" It was the question Harry had been dreading. The old system would have either expelled Malfoy or, more likely under Dumbledore, kept him at school under some secretive monitoring arrangement that inevitably failed. Neither option addressed the core issue, a student being forced to commit murder under threat to his family. "Draco has a choice," Harry said finally. "He can leave Hogwarts and continue on his current path. Or he can enter the castle by renouncing his mission and accepting the protection Hogwarts can offer, including for his mother, if she's willing." Malfoy's head snapped up. "What? How could you possibly protect my mother from the Dark Lord?" "The same way the Fidelius charm has protected others," Harry said. "The same way Hogwarts protects its own. Your mother would have to leave your home, cut ties with Voldemort's supporters, and accept sanctuary. But she would live. This is not your decision to make, Potter," Snape hissed. "Actually, it is," Harry countered. "As Master of Hogwarts, offering sanctuary is precisely within my authority." He turned back to Malfoy. "You have until midnight to decide, Draco. After that, if you haven't entered the castle, your enrollment will be formally terminated." Leaving the stunned Slytherin with his head of house, Harry walked toward the Great Hall, where the rest of the students had already assembled. The encounter had been public enough to demonstrate Hogwarts' new security measures, but private enough in its details to give Malfoy a real choice without complete humiliation. As he approached the Great Hall doors, Hermione fell into step beside him. "That was well handled," she murmured. firm but compassionate. "Let's hope it works," Harry replied. "If Draco chooses sanctuary, it might encourage others in similar situations." The Great Hall looked both familiar and transformed. The 4 house tables remained, but the strict segregation had been relaxed. Students could sit where they wished for the feast, though they would return to house tables for regular meals. The staff table had been reshaped into a semicircle, symbolizing unity of purpose rather than hierarchy. And most strikingly, the ceiling, usually enchanted to show the night sky, now displayed both stars and the founder's original architectural plans for Hogwarts, ghostly blueprints overlaying the cosmos. Professor McGonagall stood from the headmistress's chair as Harry entered. Unlike Dumbledore's throne-like seat, hers was identical to those of the other professors, another deliberate change to emphasize collaborative leadership. "Mr. Potter," she called, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet hall. "The Sorting Hat awaits your permission to begin the ceremony." It was a small acknowledgement of his authority, but a significant one coming from the traditionally proper McGonagall. Harry nodded and took his seat at the Gryffindor table beside Ron. The first years filed in, looking even smaller and more terrified than usual. Hagrid led them to the front, where the familiar 3-legged stool stood with the ancient Sorting Hat resting upon it. Before McGonagall could explain the procedure, the hat twitched, its rip of a mouth opening wide. But instead of launching into its usual song, it spoke directly to the hall. "The heir has returned," it announced in a voice deeper and more resonant than its usual tone. "Magic long dormant awakens. The Founder's true vision emerges from shadow. Let the sorting reflect this awakening, not division, but revelation of inherent gifts." A murmur ran through the hall. This was not the Sorting Hat's usual cryptic poetry. McGonagall looked startled but recovered quickly, unrolling her scroll of names. "When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool," she instructed the first years. "Abbott, Eliza." A small girl with pigtails reminiscent of Hannah Abbott, her sister, perhaps, approached the stool trembling. The hat settled over her eyes, and after a moment called out, "Hufflepuff, with Ravenclaw tendencies." The unusual addendum caused another ripple of whispers. The Hufflepuff table applauded as Eliza joined them, looking relieved but confused. "Barrow, Thomas. Ravenclaw, with Gryffindor courage." Student after student was sorted, each with a similar qualifier that highlighted crosshouse traits. By the 5th student, the pattern was clear. The hat was deliberately emphasizing the overlap between houses, the ways in which each student embodied multiple founders' values. "Brilliant," Hermione whispered from across the table. "It's maintaining the house structure but breaking down the artificial divisions." When the sorting concluded, McGonagall rose again. "Welcome to Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I have several announcements. First, as you are all aware, the school is under new management. While I continue as headmistress, Mr. Potter serves as the castle's magical custodian and security director." She gestured toward Harry, who nodded acknowledgement as hundreds of eyes turned his way. Second, staff changes. Professor Slughorn has returned to take up potions instruction, while Professor Snape will now teach defense against the dark arts. Harry had expected this. It was one concession he'd made to Dumbledore's plans, recognizing that Slughorn's return served multiple purposes in the fight against Voldemort. Third, McGonagall continued, "We welcome Ministry representatives Madam Umbridge, Mr. Weasley, and Mr. Foley, who will serve as educational quality assurance advisors." Scattered, unenthusiastic applause greeted Umbridge's smug smile. Percy looked painfully formal beside her, while Foley, a thin wizard Harry didn't recognize, merely nodded curtly. Finally, and most importantly, McGonagall's voice sharpened, "New security protocols are in effect throughout the castle. These are non-negotiable and apply to everyone, students, staff, and visitors alike. Mr. Potter will explain these measures after we eat. Now, let the feast begin." Food appeared on the golden plates, and the usual happy chaos of the welcoming feast began. Harry ate mechanically, aware of the stares and whispers directed his way. The Gryffindor table had closed ranks around him, Dean and Seamus offering supportive nods, Neville sitting protectively nearby, younger students watching him with awe. At the Ravenclaw table, Luna had created a strange headdress from napkins that somehow drew attention away from Harry, a deliberate distraction, he realized gratefully. The Hufflepuffs seemed cautiously optimistic, with Hannah Abbott and Susan Bones leading quiet discussions with their housemates. The Slytherin table was notably subdued. With Malfoy absent, the usual hierarchy had been disrupted. Zabini appeared to have temporarily assumed leadership, speaking intensely with several older students. Harry noticed that the younger Slytherins looked more relieved than concerned about the new arrangements. As desserts replaced the main course, Harry felt the castle alert him to movement at the entrance. Through the magical connection, he saw Snape leading a pale but composed Draco Malfoy toward the Great Hall. The wards rippled as Malfoy approached, testing, evaluating, and then settled, allowing passage. Malfoy had chosen Sanctuary. Harry caught Hermione's eye and nodded subtly toward the entrance. She turned, saw Malfoy entering, and raised her eyebrows in surprise. Their silent communication was interrupted as McGonagall tapped her glass for attention. Now that we are all well fed, Mr. Potter will explain the new security measures. Harry stood, feeling hundreds of eyes tracking his movement as he walked to the front of the hall. The castle's magic buoyed him, lending confidence as he turned to face the student body. Hogwarts was created to be the safest place in Britain to learn magic, he began. Over the centuries, that safety has been compromised. Dangers have been allowed in, sometimes by accident, sometimes by design. He let his gaze drift briefly to the staff table, where Umbridge's face had tightened into an angry mask. Starting tonight, the castle's original protections are restored. What does this mean for you? First, harmful items cannot enter or remain within these walls. Any dangerous artifacts currently hidden in dormitories or common rooms will be transported to a secure location overnight. A few students shifted guiltily in their seats. Second, the wards now detect harmful intent. Anyone planning to seriously hurt another person within Hogwarts will find themselves unable to execute that plan. Rubbish, a voice called from the Slytherin table, Zabini, looking skeptical. You expect us to believe the castle can read minds? Harry smiled slightly. The castle doesn't need to read minds, Mr. Zabini. Intent leaves a magical signature. But if you're doubtful, feel free to test the system. Try casting a harmful spell against another student tomorrow. You'll find it simply won't work. Zabini fell silent, but his challenging expression remained. Third, Harry continued, House elves and portraits now report directly to Headmistress McGonagall and myself regarding security concerns. Your privacy and personal matters remains respected, but threats to student safety will not be ignored. And who decides what constitutes a threat? Percy Weasley called out, his voice pompous. This sounds dangerously like surveillance. An excellent question, Mr. Weasley, Harry replied, refusing to show the pain of Ron's brother openly challenging him. The castle itself makes that determination, based on the founder's original parameters. Plotting murder, assault, or the use of unforgivables registers immediately. Lesser dangers trigger monitoring but not intervention unless the threat becomes active. Umbridge's hand shot up. Harry nodded to her with reluctance. Mr. Potter, she said in her girlish voice, Educational Decree 37 clearly states that security protocols must receive ministry approval. These measures have not been submitted for proper review. Actually, Madam Umbridge, these aren't new protocols, their original features being restored. The charter signed by Minister Scrimgeour explicitly permits restoration of original castle functions without additional approval. Harry produced a copy of the document from his robes. Section 12, Paragraph 4. I'd be happy to provide you a copy. Umbridge's smile became fixed. We shall see about that. I'm sure we will, Harry agreed pleasantly before turning back to the students. Finally, communication. Each common room now has a secure box for anonymous safety concerns. Use it if you see something concerning. Your report goes directly to Headmistress McGonagall and myself, no intermediaries." He paused, looking out at the sea of faces, some excited, some frightened, many simply confused by the rapid changes. "Hogwarts should be a second home for all of you. A place where you can learn without fear. That's what the founders intended. That's what we're restoring." He returned to his seat as McGonagall stood for final announcements. The usual reminders about the Forbidden Forest and banned items followed, though with the notable addition that Filch's list of prohibited objects had been reduced to only those with genuinely harmful properties. As the feast concluded and prefects began gathering first years, Harry felt the castle's satisfaction humming through their connection. The first and perhaps most critical phase of his plan had succeeded. Hogwarts was secure, students were safely inside, and the initial resistance had been less than expected. But as he caught sight of Umbridge furiously scribbling notes while Percy looked on disapprovingly, Harry knew this was only the beginning. The real challenges would come from outside the castle walls, from a ministry unwilling to relinquish control, from a Dumbledore convinced of his own righteousness, and from a Voldemort who would soon discover his path to Hogwarts blocked. The castle sent him a gentle warning. Umbridge was now writing what appeared to be an urgent message to the minister. Her thoughts, while not precisely visible to Harry, carried an emotional signature of vindictive triumph. First salvo fired, Harry murmured to Ron as they headed toward Gryffindor Tower. "Ministry counterattack incoming." Ron grinned. "Let them try. They don't stand a chance against Hogwarts with you at the wheel, mate." Harry hoped his friend was right. The alternative was unthinkable. 3 weeks into the term, Harry stood atop the astronomy tower, watching dawn break over the Forbidden Forest. The castle thrummed contentedly in his mind, its systems running more smoothly than they had in centuries. Students were settling into new routines, the reformed curriculum was taking shape, and even the ghosts seemed more vibrant, as if the castle's awakening had invigorated them. Not everything was perfect. The ministry's advisors continued their campaign of petty interference, demanding paperwork for every decision, questioning teaching methods, filing daily complaints with the minister. Dumbledore had established an alternative learning program at Grimmauld Place for the handful of students whose parents had withdrawn them from Hogwarts. And the Daily Prophet maintained its steady stream of increasingly hysterical articles about Potter's coup and educational anarchy. Yet within Hogwarts itself, positive changes were undeniable. Hospital wing visits had decreased by 60%. House point allocations showed remarkable balance. And most tellingly, academic performance across all houses had improved dramatically once students realized they could focus on learning without constantly watching their backs. "Thought I'd find you up here," came Hermione's voice as she emerged onto the tower platform, wrapped in a heavy cloak against the morning chill. "Council meeting in 20 minutes. The Student Advisory Council had been one of Harry's first innovations, 2 elected representatives from each house, meeting weekly with staff to address concerns and suggest improvements. Hermione served as Gryffindor's senior representative, with Neville as her counterpart. "I'll be down shortly," Harry promised. "Just checking the outer wards." Through his connection with the castle, he extended his awareness to the boundaries of the school grounds. The magical perimeter pulsed steadily, undisturbed and solid. No attempts to breach had been recorded overnight, the 3rd consecutive quiet night after weeks of probing attacks. "They're regrouping," Harry murmured. "Who? The Ministry or Voldemort?" "Both. The Ministry's legal challenges keep hitting dead ends, magical contracts are binding, and Scrimgeour signed ours." "And Voldemort?" Harry frowned. "He's too quiet. Especially after we intercepted Malfoy's mission." Draco Malfoy's decision to accept Sanctuary had proven consequential beyond Harry's expectations. Not only had the Slytherin provided detailed information about Voldemort's planned infiltration of Hogwarts, but his mother Narcissa had also eventually accepted protection, smuggled out of Malfoy Manor by Dobby and now residing in a castle chamber under Fidelius. 3 other students with Death Eater connections had subsequently approached Harry for similar arrangements. "Have you heard from Dumbledore?" Hermione asked, changing the subject. Harry shook his head. Not directly. McGonagall meets with him weekly though. She says he's focused on hunting something important, won't tell her exactly what. Horcruxes, Hermione whispered. It has to be. After what you learned from Slughorn. The memory extraction from Horace Slughorn, negotiated as part of his return to teaching, had revealed Voldemort's darkest secret, his creation of multiple Horcruxes to ensure immortality. Harry had immediately shared the information with McGonagall, who passed it to Dumbledore with Harry's reluctant permission. Probably, Harry agreed. And I don't disagree with the priority. But I wish he'd coordinate with us instead of working alone. Hermione gave him a sidelong look. You could reach out first, you know. I know, Harry sighed. Pride's a stupid thing in wartime. Their conversation was interrupted by a silver Patronus, a lynx, that bounded onto the tower. Kingsley Shacklebolt's voice emanated from the glowing animal, emergency at the Ministry. Scrimgeour under pressure to act against Hogwarts. Umbridge pushing for educational army intervention. 24 hours at most. Prepare. The Patronus dissolved, leaving Harry and Hermione staring at each other in alarm. Educational army? Hermione repeated. That sounds ominously like a military force. Umbridge has been laying groundwork for weeks, Harry said, already moving toward the stairs. We need to call an emergency meeting. All prefects, DA leaders, and staff. By midday, Hogwarts was on high alert. The castle itself seemed to bristle with defensive energy, certain statues and suits of armor repositioning themselves near entrances and key corridors. House elves busily stocked emergency supplies in designated safe rooms, while professors reviewed evacuation protocols with their students. In the room of requirement, transformed into a command center, Harry stood before a three-dimensional map of Hogwarts and its grounds. Colored dots represented positions of defense teams, each led by a trusted DA member and backed by a professor. The Ministry will likely attempt entry through official channels first, Harry explained to the assembled leaders. They'll cite educational regulations, present documents, and demand access for inspection. When that fails, and it will, given the charter protections, they'll escalate to forced entry. Can they break through the wards? Professor Flitwick asked, his expertise in charms making the question particularly relevant. Not easily, Harry replied. The original Founder's wards are far stronger than what Dumbledore maintained. But with enough power and Ministry resources. They might find weak points, Flitwick nodded. Where are our vulnerabilities? The map highlighted several areas in yellow, the main gates, the boathouse, 3 hidden passages that extended beyond ward boundaries. We've reinforced these areas, but they remain potential entry points, Harry explained. Each needs a defensive team. What about evacuation? Professor Sprout asked. If it comes to actual fighting, the younger students shouldn't be at risk. Room of Requirement will provide an exit passage to Aberforth's pub in Hogsmeade if needed, Harry assured her. And the house elves can transport the youngest directly to safety. Ron, who had been studying the map intently, pointed to the main gates. They'll bring overwhelming force here as a distraction. Meanwhile, their real entry team will target a secondary point, probably the boathouse, since it's least visible from the castle. Agreed, Harry said, impressed by his friend's tactical assessment. Hermione will coordinate our main gate defenders with Professor McGonagall. Ron, you and Professor Flitwick take the boathouse position. Assignments continued until every key position was covered. As the meeting concluded, McGonagall held Harry back. A word, Mr. Potter. She waited until the others had left before continuing. Albus has requested a meeting. Harry blinked in surprise. Now. With the Ministry about to attack. Perhaps because the Ministry is about to attack, McGonagall suggested. He proposes neutral ground, the Shrieking Shack, 1 hour from now. Harry considered the request. His relationship with Dumbledore remained complex, anger and disappointment mingled with lingering respect and even affection for the man who had, despite his flaws, tried to guide him. "What do you think, Professor? Is it a trap?" McGonagall's expression softened slightly. "Albus has many faults, but direct betrayal is not among them. I believe he genuinely wishes to help." "Fine," Harry decided. "I'll meet him. But I want you to know about something first." He hesitated, then pressed on. "The castle showed me something yesterday, a hidden room below the dungeons. Inside was a stone basin filled with swirling silver light." McGonagall's eyebrows shot up. "A pensieve? Besides Albus's own?" "Not just any pensieve," Harry said quietly. "According to the castle's memory, it belonged to Salazar Slytherin himself. And it contains memories that the other founders preserved, including memories of why Slytherin really left Hogwarts." "That's potentially revolutionary," McGonagall said carefully. "Have you viewed these memories?" Harry nodded. "The conflict wasn't about blood purity, at least, not primarily. It was about how to protect students from external threats. Slytherin wanted aggressive defensive magic taught from the earliest ages. The others preferred a more gradual approach. History written by the victors," McGonagall murmured. "This could change everything we think we know about house divisions." "Exactly. And I plan to use it, to show students that the core houses aren't about blood or background, but about different approaches to magic and life." Harry checked his watch. "I should go if I'm going to meet Dumbledore." McGonagall nodded. "Be careful, Potter. And remember, Albus thinks in decades, not moments. Whatever he proposes will be part of a longer game." The Shrieking Shack looked exactly as Harry remembered, dusty, decrepit, with boarded windows and creaking floorboards. He'd entered through the Whomping Willow Passage, leaving Neville guarding the entrance with strict instructions to send help if Harry didn't return within 2 hours. Dumbledore stood by the broken piano, examining it with apparent interest. He looked older than when Harry had last seen him, more worn. His right hand, Harry noticed with a shock, appeared blackened and withered. "Harry," Dumbledore said warmly, turning at the sound of footsteps. "Thank you for coming." "Professor," Harry acknowledged, eyeing the damaged hand. "What happened?" Dumbledore glanced at his injured hand as if noticing it for the first time. "A consequence of destroying one of Tom's Horcruxes. A ring, once belonging to his maternal grandfather. It carried a particularly nasty curse. Can it be healed?" "Professor Snape has contained it, but the damage is permanent. Eventually, it will spread." Dumbledore's tone was matter-of-fact. "But we have more pressing concerns today. I understand the Ministry plans to move against Hogwarts." Harry nodded, still processing the implications of Dumbledore's injury. "Umbridge has been building toward this for weeks. They've created some kind of educational army, probably Aurors with specialized training against magical buildings." "Indeed. Rufus has been recruiting cursebreakers and ward specialists from across Europe." Dumbledore's blue eyes met Harry's. "They have developed methods that might breach even the Founder's protections, given enough time and power." "You're here to suggest I surrender the castle," Harry guessed, a hard edge entering his voice. "Go back to the old arrangement. Put students at risk again for your greater good." Dumbledore shook his head. "Quite the opposite, my boy. I'm here to offer my assistance in defending Hogwarts." Harry stared at him in disbelief. "You want to help me? After I evicted you?" "I want to help Hogwarts," Dumbledore corrected gently. "As I have always tried to do, even when my methods were imperfect. The Ministry's planned action will cause chaos and potentially harm the very students they claim to protect." "Why the change of heart?" "Not a change," Dumbledore sighed. "A recognition. In my pursuit of defeating Voldemort, I sometimes lost sight of more immediate duties. Your claiming of the castle forced me to reconsider my priorities." Harry studied the old wizard, looking for signs of deception. But Dumbledore seemed genuine, tired, pained by his injury, but sincere. "What exactly are you offering?" "My presence on the grounds would strengthen the defenses considerably," Dumbledore explained. "Not as headmaster, Minerva fills that role admirably, but as an ally. Additionally, I have certain influence with ministry officials that might be leveraged to prevent the most aggressive actions." Harry paced the dusty room, considering. "The castle would need to accept you back. After the ejection protocols were triggered. Hogwarts responds to intent," Dumbledore reminded him. "My intent now is solely to protect its students, something I believe the castle will recognize." The offer was tempting. Despite their differences, Harry knew Dumbledore's magical power and political connections would be invaluable in the coming confrontation. Yet trust, once broken, wasn't easily repaired. "There would be conditions," Harry said finally. "Complete transparency about all security matters. No more secrets, no more manipulations. And you would need to publicly acknowledge my authority as Hogwarts' rightful master." Dumbledore inclined his head. "Reasonable terms. Though I would ask for one exception: information regarding Horcruxes must remain closely guarded. The fewer who know, the safer the mission to destroy them." "Agreed, but my inner circle gets the full briefing: Ron, Hermione, Neville, Luna. They've earned the right to understand what we're really fighting." "Very well." Dumbledore extended his uninjured hand. "Partners, then. For Hogwarts." Harry hesitated only briefly before clasping the offered hand. "For Hogwarts." Their uneasy alliance formed, they began planning. Dumbledore's knowledge of ministry procedures and personnel provided valuable insights into likely tactics, while Harry's connection with the castle allowed for unprecedented defensive coordination. "The primary attack will come at dawn," Dumbledore predicted. 30 to 40 specialists, led by Gawain Robards, Scrimgeour's new head Auror. He favors overwhelming force applied at multiple points simultaneously. "We've prepared for multi-point attacks," Harry confirmed. "But not for that many specialists. Which is why we need a strategic revelation." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled faintly. "Something that disrupts their legal justification before the attack can fully develop." "Such as?" "The Founder's original charter, not the simplified version preserved in ministry archives, but the complete document with all its provisions. It contains specific limitations on ministry interference that even modern ministerial power cannot override." Harry frowned. Wouldn't the ministry have destroyed such a document long ago, precisely because it limits their power? "They believe they did," Dumbledore smiled. "But Hogwarts itself preserved a copy, in a location only the castle's true master can access." Understanding dawned. "The Founder's chamber. The room beneath the Great Hall where I performed the claiming ritual." "Exactly. The chamber contains not only the charter but also a mechanism for its public proclamation, a magical broadcasting system that can reach every wizarding home in Britain simultaneously." "Like a magical radio broadcast?" Harry asked, intrigued. "More direct. The Founders created it to announce matters of critical importance to the entire wizarding community." Dumbledore leaned forward. "If you were to activate this system and publicly read the Charter's provisions regarding educational autonomy, it would create a legal crisis the ministry couldn't easily dismiss." Harry thought quickly. "We'd need to time it perfectly, just as they begin their attack, but before any students can be endangered." "Precisely." Dumbledore rose stiffly. "I suggest we return to Hogwarts immediately to prepare. Dawn comes early this time of year." The castle welcomed Harry back instantly, its wards recognizing and embracing him. Dumbledore's return, however, created a momentary ripple of magical uncertainty, the ejection protocols activating briefly before subsiding as the castle assessed his changed intent. A tense moment, Dumbledore observed mildly as they crossed the threshold into the entrance hall. "But I believe Hogwarts and I have reached an understanding." McGonagall met them at the foot of the marble staircase, eyebrows rising at the sight of Dumbledore. "Albus. This is unexpected." "Minerva. A pleasure to be back, however temporarily. Dumbledore bowed slightly. I come as Mr. Potter's guest, to assist in the coming confrontation. We've formed an alliance, Harry explained, noting her skeptical expression. Professor Dumbledore has information about the Ministry's plans and a strategy that might prevent bloodshed. McGonagall's tight expression relaxed marginally. Well, we certainly need every advantage. The latest intelligence from Kingsley indicates they've moved up their timeline. The assault force is already gathering in Hogsmeade. Then we must act quickly, Dumbledore said. Harry, the Founder's chamber awaits. Minerva, if you would summon the defense leaders to the Great Hall. We have much to coordinate before dawn. As McGonagall departed, Harry led Dumbledore toward the center of the Great Hall where the Founder's seal had appeared during his claiming ritual. The vast room stood empty at this late hour, house tables pushed against walls in preparation for possible conflict. The castle will reveal the entrance only to you, Dumbledore explained, standing back. Focus your intent on accessing the Founder's legacy, their wisdom, their governance, their vision. Harry placed his palm on the floor where he remembered the seal appearing. Closing his eyes, he connected deeply with Hogwarts, visualizing not just the physical chamber but the knowledge it contained, the true purpose and governance of a school created to protect magical children in perpetuity. The stone beneath his hand warmed, then seemed to ripple like water. The floor parted in a spiraling motion, revealing a staircase of gleaming marble that descended into soft golden light. Extraordinary, Dumbledore breathed. Few living wizards have witnessed this. They descended into a circular chamber with walls of polished stone inlaid with precious metals in intricate runic patterns. Four massive chairs, one for each Founder, surrounded a central pedestal upon which rested an ancient tome bound in leather and precious metals. The true charter, Dumbledore indicated the book. Written in the Founder's own hands, imbued with their combined magic. A magical contract that has quietly governed Hogwarts despite centuries of outside interference. Harry approached reverently. The book seemed to hum with latent power, its cover emblazoned with the Hogwarts crest in its original form, the four house animals intertwined rather than separated into quadrants. How do I broadcast its contents? Dumbledore gestured to a crystalline structure resembling a podium near the pedestal. Place the charter there when you're ready to begin. But first, we should review the specific provisions that will counteract the Ministry's claims. They spent the next hour studying the ancient text, Harry marveling at the Founder's foresight. The charter explicitly protected Hogwarts from external governance, creating a self-sustaining educational institution answerable only to its students' welfare. Most crucially, it contained binding magical prohibitions against military action against the school, prohibitions that predated the Ministry itself and held superior legal standing. This is brilliant, Harry said, finally understanding the full implications. The Ministry literally cannot attack Hogwarts without violating magical law that predates their own authority. Precisely, Dumbledore agreed. Which is why they've tried so hard to suppress knowledge of the complete charter. The simplified version in their archives omits these critical protections. A silver Patronus, McGonagall's cat, appeared in the chamber. Movement in Hogsmeade. Ministry forces mobilizing. Defense teams in position. Harry checked his watch, 4:30 a.m. First light would come within the hour. It's time, he said, lifting the weighty charter carefully. You should join McGonagall and the others. I'll handle the broadcast. Dumbledore hesitated. The broadcast will make you a target, Harry. The Ministry won't easily forgive this challenge to their authority. I've been a target since I was born, Harry replied with a wry smile. At least this time it's for something I've chosen. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, then nodded. You've grown into a remarkable young man, Harry. Your parents would be proud. He turned toward the stairs, then paused. Whatever our past disagreements, I want you to know that I, too, am proud of what you've become. Then he was gone, leaving Harry alone in the ancient chamber with the weight of centuries-old magic in his hands. The crystalline podium glowed softly as Harry approached. Following instinct rather than instruction, he placed the charter upon it and laid his hands on either side of the book. The castle's presence surged in his mind, stronger than ever, guiding him through the unfamiliar process. I, Harry James Potter, heir of Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, master of Hogwarts, invoke the Founder's voice, he declared, the words coming naturally through his connection with the castle. Let all witches and wizards of Britain hear the true charter and know its power. The crystal structure beneath his hands flared with blinding light. Harry felt the castle's magic surge outward in expanding waves, connecting with the ambient magic that suffused wizarding Britain. In his mind's eye, he saw the network forming, thousands of points of light representing magical households, each receiving the signal he was about to send. Taking a deep breath, Harry began to read from the glowing pages before him, his voice amplified and transformed by the ancient magic. We, the founders four of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, do hereby establish this charter to govern our creation until magic itself fades from the world. Let all who hear these words understand the immutable laws upon which Hogwarts stands. Across wizarding Britain, breakfast conversations halted as Harry's voice emerged from the air itself, not as a distant broadcast but as if he stood in each room speaking directly to its occupants. In the ministry atrium, officials froze in mid-stride as the pronouncement echoed through the cavernous space. In Hogsmeade, aurors preparing for assault looked up in confusion as the words washed over them. Within Hogwarts, students awoke to find themselves automatically gathering in common rooms, drawn by the broadcast that seemed to emerge from the castle walls themselves. Staff and defense teams paused in their preparations, listening as Harry read the forgotten provisions that had protected Hogwarts for a millennium. No governing body or authority created after the founding of this school shall claim jurisdiction over its governance, security, or educational practices when such claims contradict the will of the castle's rightful master or the welfare of its students. Any attempt to seize control of Hogwarts through military action, magical compulsion, or bureaucratic manipulation shall constitute a direct violation of this charter, triggering magical consequences for the perpetrators. The castle itself shall be empowered to defend its inhabitants against all threats, external and internal, with force proportional to the danger presented. As Harry continued, the castle's defenses visibly strengthened. The ancient stone walls glowed with renewed protective enchantments. Statues and suits of armor throughout the grounds animated fully, taking defensive positions. Even the lake stirred, the giant squid's tentacles breaching the surface as if awakened to its ancient duty as guardian. In Hogsmeade, Rufus Scrimgeour listened with growing alarm as his legal justification for action crumbled under the weight of magic more ancient than the ministry itself. Beside him, Dolores Umbridge's face contorted with rage. "This changes nothing," she hissed. "The boy can't just broadcast ancient documents and expect to override ministry authority." "Be quiet, Dolores," Scrimgeour snapped, his aura training recognizing the shift in magical reality around them. The air itself seemed charged with power emanating from the castle on the hill. "This changes everything." Gawain Robards, commander of the assembled forces, approached cautiously. "Minister, the men are asking questions. This broadcast, it's affecting the very magic they would need to use against the castle." "Of course it is," Scrimgeour muttered. "The founders weren't fools. They built magical prohibitions directly into Britain's magical substrate. So we're standing down?" Robards asked, clearly relieved. Scrimgeour glanced at Umbridge, whose face had turned an alarming shade of purple, then back at the castle now visibly glowing with protective magic in the pre-dawn light. "We're standing down," he confirmed. "Attacking now would be magically problematic for everyone involved." "You can't be serious." Umbridge shrieked. "After all our preparations? After the promises to the Board of Governors? Would you like to lead the charge yourself, Dolores?" Scrimgeour asked coldly. "Because my aurors now legally cannot attack Hogwarts without their own magic rebounding against them. That's what this broadcast has done, activated magical law that supersedes ministry authority." As if confirming his assessment, the broadcast continued, Harry's voice unwavering as he read the final provisions. Should these protections be challenged, Hogwarts shall stand as its own authority, a beacon of magical education independent from transient political powers. Its legacy shall be preserved through its heirs, its knowledge protected for all worthy students regardless of blood, background, or belief. So we have written, so we have willed, so magic itself shall enforce until the end of days. Signed in magic and blood, Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, Salazar Slytherin. The broadcast concluded with a surge of magical energy that rippled visibly across the countryside. In the ministry, magical contracts spontaneously updated themselves, ancient departments responsible for educational oversight found their authority reconfigured, and the minister's own office detected the shift in magical jurisdiction. And at Hogwarts, students and staff emerged onto the grounds to find the ministry forces already withdrawing from Hogsmeade, the threatened invasion averted not through violence but through the activation of magic laid down by the founders themselves. Harry, emerging from the chamber beneath the Great Hall, found the entire school waiting for him. Their faces showed a mixture of awe, confusion, and, most surprisingly, hope. "It worked," Hermione whispered, rushing forward to meet him. "The ministry forces are pulling back. Kingsley just sent word, Scrimgeour's been forced to acknowledge the Charter's authority." "Not just Scrimgeour," Dumbledore added, approaching with McGonagall. "The broadcast reached every magical household in Britain. Public opinion is already shifting. Parents are owling the ministry demanding they respect Hogwarts' autonomy." Harry looked out at the assembled students, from first years still in pajamas to seventh years with wands drawn ready to defend their school. He saw fear giving way to pride, division yielding to unity. "What happens now?" someone called from the crowd. Harry exchanged glances with McGonagall and Dumbledore, then stepped forward to address the school. "Now," he said, "we build the Hogwarts the founders always intended, safe, united, and truly magical. And no one, not the ministry, not Voldemort, not anyone, will ever threaten that again." As if in response, the castle itself seemed to shimmer with approval, the morning sun breaking over the horizon to illuminate Hogwarts in brilliant golden light. The first real battle had been won without a single curse fired, but Harry knew the war for Hogwarts' future was far from over. Somewhere beyond these protected walls, Voldemort would be listening too, planning his response to this unexpected development. The Dark Lord had never intended to leave Hogwarts independent, and unlike the ministry, he wouldn't be deterred by ancient magical law. But for this moment, as students cheered and the castle stood secure, Harry allowed himself to feel something he'd rarely experienced at Hogwarts before, genuine safety. Whatever came next, they would face it together, not as separate houses or divided factions, but as Hogwarts united. The resistance had won its first major victory. The revolution could truly begin. Chapter 3, The Battle for Hogwarts. Winter settled over Hogwarts like a protective blanket, snow softening the castle's ancient contours as students hurried between greenhouses and the main building, their breath fogging in the crisp December air. 3 months had passed since the ministry's attempted takeover, and the school had undergone a transformation that few could have imagined. Harry stood at the window of what had once been the headmaster's office, now repurposed as the Founder's Chamber, a shared leadership space where he, McGonagall, and the heads of houses met regularly. The circular room had been redesigned with a round table at its center, eliminating the hierarchical feel of Dumbledore's original arrangement. The mysterious silver instruments were gone, replaced by a massive three-dimensional model of the castle that tracked security status in real time. "Canute for your thoughts, mate?" Ron asked, dropping into one of the chairs surrounding the table. His prefect badge, redesigned to incorporate elements of all 4 houses, gleamed on his chest. "Just taking it all in," Harry replied, turning from the window. "Sometimes I still can't believe how much has changed. For the better, according to the latest student satisfaction survey," Hermione added, entering with a stack of parchment hovering behind her. 93% approval rating across all houses. Even the Slytherins are at 87%. Harry grinned. "Zabini still leading the holdouts?" "Actually, no. He's come around since you approved his independent study project." Hermione flicked her wand, sending the parchments to their designated spots on the table. It's mostly a few seventh years worried about how the changes will affect their Newt scores. The door opened again, admitting Neville and Luna. Neville's confidence had grown immensely over the past months, his role as Harry's security chief transforming the once timid boy into a respected leader. Luna, who'd taken charge of Hogwarts' newly established intelligence network, looked characteristically dreamy but carried a leather-bound notebook that Harry knew contained meticulously organized information. "Everyone here?" "Good," Harry said as they settled around the table. "Let's get started before McGonagall arrives with the staff." "What's our status?" "Castle defenses remain at peak efficiency," Neville reported, tapping the 3D model with his wand. "The outer wards haven't detected any serious probing attempts in 2 weeks. Either they've given up or they're planning something that requires more preparation. The DA training program has certified another 30 students in advanced defensive magic," Ron added. "That puts us at over 100 students capable of meaningful resistance if it comes to that." "Which we hope it won't," Hermione interjected. "The diplomatic front shows promise. 3 members of the Board of Governors have publicly endorsed our educational reforms. The Prophet's editorial stance has softened since we invited Rita Skeeter for that exclusive tour." "Amazing what happens when you show people actual results," Harry said. "Education improves, accidents decrease, and students learn more when they're not terrified or being tortured with blood quills." Luna cleared her throat softly. "My sources indicate increased activity among known Death Eater families. They're gathering resources, making unusual purchases of certain potions, ingredients and restricted magical items. Voldemort's getting ready to make his move," Harry concluded. "The question is when and how. And whether Dumbledore will be with us when it happens," Neville added quietly. That was the uncomfortable question that had hung over them for weeks. After helping prevent the Ministry attack, Dumbledore had returned to his Horcrux hunt, maintaining irregular contact through McGonagall. His relationship with Harry remained complicated, tentative cooperation overlaid with lingering distrust on both sides. "Speaking of Dumbledore," Hermione said, pulling a letter from her robes, "this just arrived for you, Harry. His Phoenix delivered it directly to me when you were inspecting the greenhouses." Harry accepted the letter, breaking the familiar seal with mixed emotions. The others waited silently as he read, watching his expression shift from curiosity to concern. "He's destroyed another Horcrux," Harry announced. "The Locket of Slytherin. But he's certain Voldemort knows now, the magical backlash was impossible to conceal." "That means," Ron began. "Voldemort will accelerate his plans," Harry finished. "Dumbledore thinks he'll target Hogwarts directly, possibly within days." Luna nodded as if this confirmed her own information. "The celestial alignment at the winter solstice would maximize certain forms of dark magic. That's 4 days from now. That tracks with what Draco told us about Voldemort's interest in astronomical timing," Hermione said. "His father apparently mentioned solstice rituals that could temporarily overwhelm even ancient wards." Harry paced around the table, thinking rapidly. "Dumbledore's coming back to help defend the castle. He says he'll arrive tomorrow with critical information about Voldemort's final Horcruxes. Can we trust him?" Neville asked bluntly. "We don't have to trust him completely to work with him against Voldemort," Harry replied. "And right now, we need every advantage." The door opened as McGonagall arrived with the other heads of houses. Professor Sprout looked flushed from the greenhouses, while tiny Professor Flitwick balanced precariously on his enchanted step-stool. Professor Slughorn, who had replaced Snape as Slytherin head when the latter's complex loyalties became untenable, puffed slightly from climbing the stairs. Professor Snape himself entered last, his expression as unreadable as ever. Harry had made the controversial decision to keep Snape on staff after the castle itself had confirmed the man's ultimate loyalty lay with protecting the students, regardless of his personal dislike for Harry. Their relationship remained frosty but professional, built on grudging mutual respect. "I see you've received Albus's letter," McGonagall observed, noting the parchment in Harry's hand. Then you know we must prepare for imminent attack. We've already begun, Harry confirmed. But we'll need to accelerate our plans. He turned to the 3D model, which expanded to show the entire castle and grounds in greater detail. Professor Flitwick, how quickly can we implement the advanced ward modifications you've been developing? The diminutive charms master considered. With sufficient power sources. 24 hours for the main sequence. Another 12 for the contingency layers. Start immediately. Pull any students with outstanding OWLs and charms to assist. Harry turned to Sprout. Professor, we'll need the defensive herbology measures in place, particularly around the vulnerable perimeters. The venomous tentacula are ready for transplant, and the devil's snare seedlings have matured nicely, she replied with grim satisfaction. I can have them positioned by nightfall. Minerva, Harry continued, will implement the full evacuation protocol for 1st through 4th years. 5th and above can stay if they choose and have parents' permission. Actually, about that, Hermione interrupted, sliding a document across the table. I've prepared an update to the emergency parent communication system. If we send these now, we can have signed permissions back by morning. Perfect. And Professor Slughorn, Harry turned to the portly potions master, we'll need every combat potion you can produce, strengthening solutions, shield potions, anything that might give us an edge. Already brewing, my boy. Slughorn patted his waistcoat proudly. Called in a few favors from old students in the apothecary business. Ingredients for 50 combat kits arriving this evening. Excellent. Harry finally turned to Snape, whose dark eyes had been following the exchange with analytical intensity. Professor, you know Voldemort's tactics better than anyone. We need your assessment of likely attack vectors. Snape stepped forward, wand extending toward the castle model. With precise movements, he highlighted specific areas in glowing red. The Dark Lord favors overwhelming force combined with precision strikes. He will likely create a diversion here, a section of the Forbidden Forest boundary glowed brighter, while sending his elite forces through lesser-known entrances. 2 more areas illuminated, the boathouse and a section of the castle's north wall where the stone was newer than surrounding areas. He'll also have agents already inside, Snape continued, his voice clinically detached. Not necessarily willing ones. Students whose families serve him may be placed under imperius or threatened into cooperation. That's why we implemented the intent detection system, Harry nodded. Anyone planning hostile action will trigger the castle's defensive protocols. A system the Dark Lord will expect and plan to circumvent, Snape countered. He has studied the castle's defenses for decades. Even with the original wards restored, he will have identified potential weaknesses. Which is why we've added new defenses he doesn't know about, Harry replied with a hint of satisfaction. The Founders left, contingencies that even Dumbledore never activated. Snape raised a skeptical eyebrow. Such as? Harry exchanged glances with McGonagall, who nodded slightly. The Founders' Guardians, he said. For magical constructs designed as a last line of defense. Each tied to a house element, lion, badger, eagle, and serpent. That's just a myth, Slughorn protested. I've studied Hogwarts history for decades, and there's no reliable account of such guardians. Because they were hidden in the heart of Hogwarts, Harry explained. A chamber beneath the Great Hall that only opens to the castle's true master. I've seen them, massive magical constructs, dormant for centuries. And you believe you can control these, guardians? Snape's voice dripped skepticism. Not control, awaken. They respond to genuine threat to the school. Harry turned back to the model. But they're truly a last resort. Our primary defense remains the ward system, the trained DA members, and staff coordination. McGonagall cleared her throat. We should discuss Albus's role when he arrives. His power would be invaluable in defense, but chain of command must be clear. Agreed, Harry said. He'll serve as special advisor, but all defensive decisions remain with this council. He gestured to encompass those gathered around the table. We've prepared for this moment since September. Hogwarts stands ready. As the meeting continued into specific tactical plans, Harry felt the castle's awareness brush against his consciousness, supportive, alert, but with an underlying concern that matched his own. Through their connection, he sensed something the others couldn't, a distant pressure against the outermost magical boundaries, subtle but persistent. The preliminary testing had already begun. Voldemort's forces were probing, searching for weakness. The battle for Hogwarts was coming, and it would determine the fate not just of the school but of Wizarding Britain itself. Albus Dumbledore arrived at dawn the following day, operating to the edge of the Hogwarts grounds where the boundary wards had been temporarily modified to admit him. Harry stood waiting at the gates, wrapped in a heavy cloak against the December chill. "Harry," Dumbledore greeted him, looking even more worn than during their last meeting. The blackened hand was now concealed in a silver glove, but the damage had clearly spread, dark veins visible at his wrist where sleeve met glove. "You look well. Leadership suits you." "You look terrible," Harry replied bluntly, though without malice. "The Horcrux hunting is taking its toll." "Indeed. Destroying pieces of Tom's soul carries consequences." Dumbledore gazed up at the castle, which gleamed in the early morning light. "Hogwarts, however, appears to be thriving under your care." "The castle responds to proper treatment," Harry said as they began walking toward the main entrance. "When you stop working against its natural defenses and start working with them, everything improves." "A lesson I learned too late," Dumbledore acknowledged. "My focus on the greater conflict with Tom led me to compromise security in ways I now regret." They walked in silence for a moment, their breath frosting in the cold air. Students were just beginning to emerge for early breakfast, many stopping to stare at the unexpected sight of Dumbledore returning. "You mentioned critical information about the remaining Horcruxes," Harry prompted as they approached the castle doors. "Yes. I've confirmed what I long suspected. Tom created exactly 6 Horcruxes, plus the unintentional fragment that resides in his reconstituted body." Dumbledore held up his good hand, counting off. "The diary you destroyed in your second year. The ring I eliminated last summer. The locket, just 3 days ago. Leaving 3 unknown," Harry concluded. "Not entirely unknown. I believe they are Hufflepuff's cup, an object of Ravenclaw's, and his serpent, Nagini." Dumbledore's blue eyes were grave. "But there's more, Harry. Something I've delayed telling you far too long." Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter morning. "Let's continue this inside." They entered the castle, where the great hall buzzed with activity, students eating breakfast while staff members oversaw the strengthening of interior defenses. Suits of armor were being positioned at strategic intervals, their metal forms glowing with fresh enchantments. Older students practiced shield charms under Professor Flitwick's guidance, while Madame Pomfrey organized medical supplies with a team of volunteers. Ignoring the stares and whispers that followed Dumbledore's arrival, Harry led the way to the Founder's chamber. The rest of his inner circle was already gathered there, along with McGonagall and Snape. The atmosphere tensed noticeably as Dumbledore entered. "Professor Dumbledore has information about the remaining Horcruxes," Harry announced without preamble. "And apparently something else he's been keeping from me. Something important enough to finally share now that we're facing imminent attack." All eyes turned to Dumbledore, who stood tall despite his obvious physical deterioration. "First, the tactical information," he began. "Voldemort has indeed accelerated his timeline. My sources confirm a planned attack during the solstice, approximately 36 hours from now. He will lead personally, bringing his entire force, Death Eaters, Giants, Dementors, and controlled werewolves." "How many?" Neville asked, ever the practical strategist. "Approximately 100 Death Eaters, 5 to 7 Giants, at least 50 Dementors, and a dozen werewolves." Dumbledore's assessment was clinical. "Additionally, he has recruited foreign dark wizards, perhaps 20, with specialized skills in breaking ancient wards." "That aligns with our intelligence," Luna confirmed, consulting her notebook. Though we've also noted unusual movement among the Acromantula colony in the Forbidden Forest. They may have been pressed into service as well. Dumbledore nodded. A distinct possibility. Aragog's death has left the colony vulnerable to outside influence. And the Ministry? Harry asked. Where do they stand? Officially neutral, Dumbledore said with a hint of disgust. Scrimgeour refuses to commit Aurors to Hogwarts' defense after the humiliation of his failed takeover attempt. Unofficially, several Aurors have requested personal leave coinciding with the solstice. They may arrive as volunteers. Better than nothing, Ron muttered. Now, to the matter I've delayed discussing. Dumbledore turned directly to Harry, his expression grave. The night Voldemort tried to kill you as an infant, his soul was already unstable from creating 5 Horcruxes. When the killing curse rebounded, it tore away another fragment of his soul, which latched onto the only living thing present, you, Harry. The room fell silent. Harry stared at Dumbledore, processing the implications. I'm a Horcrux, he said finally, the words falling like stones. Not precisely, Dumbledore clarified. A Horcrux is a deliberately created vessel. You contain a soul fragment, but were never properly converted through the necessary dark rituals. This distinction is magically significant. But Voldemort can't die while I live, Harry pressed, cutting to the heart of it. That's what you're saying. Dumbledore hesitated. That was my fear for many years. But recent discoveries suggest alternatives. The claiming of Hogwarts has changed things in ways I didn't anticipate. Explain, Harry demanded, aware of his friend's horrified expressions. The Founders built mechanisms into Hogwarts for purging dark magic, Dumbledore explained. One such mechanism, located in the heart of Hogwarts, might be capable of extracting the soul fragment without harming you. Might? Hermione interjected sharply. You're suggesting an untested magical procedure on Harry when failure means his death. Not untested, Dumbledore countered. The records indicate it was used successfully during the castle's early years to cleanse students exposed to certain dark artifacts. Harry paced the room, mind racing. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Years sooner. Because until you claimed the castle, the mechanism was inaccessible, Dumbledore replied. And because I feared what you might do with the knowledge before you were ready. Your tendency toward self-sacrifice, don't, Harry cut him off. Don't pretend this was about protecting me. You kept me in the dark because it was convenient for your plans. Dumbledore didn't deny it. I made mistakes, Harry. Grave ones. But we now have an opportunity one never thought possible, to remove Voldemort's soul fragment while preserving your life. Harry stopped pacing, looking at each person in the room, his friends, his allies, the professors who had become something like family. Their concern was palpable, but so was their determination. Show me this mechanism, he decided. If it exists, if it works the way you claim, we'll use it. But only after we've secured Hogwarts against the coming attack. Voldemort's forces are the priority. The two may be linked, Dumbledore cautioned. If Tom senses his soul fragment within you during battle, he may target you specifically to protect it. All the more reason to be fully prepared before attempting anything, Harry replied firmly. Now, let's focus on the immediate threat. Professor Dumbledore, you know Voldemort's tactics better than anyone. We need your insights on our defense plans. The meeting shifted to battle preparations, the revelation about Harry temporarily set aside though certainly not forgotten. As they reviewed defensive positions and evacuation procedures, Harry felt the weight of Dumbledore's disclosure pressing against his mind. A piece of Voldemort lived inside him, had always lived inside him. It explained so much, the connection, the Parseltongue ability, the painful scar reactions. Yet strangely, the knowledge didn't terrify him as it might have once. Through his bond with Hogwarts, Harry had developed a deeper understanding of magic's nature, how it could be shaped, redirected, even purified. If the founders had indeed created a mechanism for cleansing dark magic, perhaps there was genuine hope. The evacuation will begin this afternoon, McGonagall was saying as Harry refocused on the meeting. Younger students will depart via the Room of Requirement passage to Aberforth's pub, then float to secure locations. The remaining defenders will organize in house-based teams, Neville added, indicating positions on the castle model. Each covering specific sections with overlapping fields of fire. DA members integrated with staff for maximum effectiveness. Harry nodded approval. And the Founders' Guardians will remain in reserve, activated only if the outer defenses fall. About these Guardians, Dumbledore interjected. I've encountered references in my research but never confirmation. What exactly are they? Magical constructs, Harry explained. Similar to the animated suits of armor but far more powerful. Each embodies the magical essence of a founder, Gryffindor's courage, Hufflepuff's loyalty, Ravenclaw's wisdom, and Slytherin's cunning. And how are they controlled? Dumbledore pressed. They're not controlled exactly, Harry said. They respond to the castle's needs as interpreted through its connection with its master. Which means they follow my general intent rather than specific commands. Dumbledore looked troubled. Such magical autonomy carries risks, Harry. If these constructs interpret your intent too broadly, they won't, Harry said with certainty. The castle understands the difference between defense and aggression. The Guardians will protect students and the school itself, nothing more. Very well, Dumbledore conceded, though his concern remained visible. I suggest we inspect the outer defenses next. If Tom follows his usual approach, he'll target the wardlines hours before the main assault, looking for vulnerabilities. As the meeting concluded, Harry held Hermione back. Once they were alone, he asked the question burning in his mind. Did you know? About me being containing a Horcrux? Hermione's eyes filled with tears. I suspected something. The connection between you and Voldemort never made sense otherwise. But I hoped I was wrong. She gripped his hand tightly. Harry, we'll find a way through this. If this Founder's mechanism exists, if there's any chance it works, and if it doesn't, he asked quietly. Then we find another way, she said fiercely. I won't accept any plan that ends with you sacrificing yourself. Neither will Ron, or Neville, or Luna, or anyone else who cares about you. Harry squeezed her hand in return. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The evacuation began at midday, conducted with the efficiency that had become hallmark of the new Hogwarts administration. Younger students gathered in the Great Hall with packed trunks, supervised by prefects who checked names against master lists. McGonagall addressed them briefly, explaining the precautions as routine security measures to minimize panic while ensuring compliance. Harry watched from the entrance, feeling the castle's approval of the orderly process. Through their connection, he sensed the Room of Requirement expanding its tunnel to accommodate the evacuation flow, the magic responding to the school's needs with intuitive precision. Impressive organization, Dumbledore commented, joining Harry at the doorway. They trust your leadership implicitly. They trust a system that actually protects them, Harry corrected him. Something they didn't have before. Dumbledore accepted the rebuke with a slight nod. The outer wards have detected increased activity in Hogsmeade. Strangers arriving by various means, avoiding main streets. Death Eaters establishing forward positions, Harry surmised. Earlier than expected. Tom was always impatient when victory seemed within reach. Dumbledore studied the departing students thoughtfully. I'd like to examine this Founder's mechanism you mentioned, both for your sake and to ensure it isn't targeted during the attack. Harry hesitated, still wary of Dumbledore's tendency to withhold critical information. But the situation demanded cooperation. After the evacuation is complete, he decided. Hermione comes with us. A wise precaution, Dumbledore agreed, surprising Harry. Miss Granger's analytical mind may notice details I miss. They parted ways, Dumbledore to assist Professor Flitwick with final ward configurations while Harry continued overseeing the evacuation. By mid-afternoon, all students 4th year and below had been safely transported to Hogsmeade and beyond, leaving approximately 200 older students who had chosen to remain and fight. These volunteers gathered in the transformed Great Hall, where house tables had been replaced by training stations. 7th years practiced advanced shield charms under Professor McGonagall's supervision. 6th years brewed combat potions guided by Slughorn and his Newt students. 5th years assembled medical kits and practiced emergency first aid spells with Madame Pomfrey. Harry moved between stations, offering encouragement and occasionally demonstrating techniques from his DA leadership days. Despite the grim circumstances, he felt a surge of pride seeing students from all houses working together, Slytherins alongside Gryffindors, Ravenclaws partnering with Hufflepuffs. Harry! Neville called from the entrance. Perimeter team reports movement at the edge of the forest. Not attacking yet, just watching. Psychological tactics, Harry replied, following Neville to the map table set up near the staff platform. Making sure we know they're there. The 3D model of Hogwarts now showed tiny red dots clustering along the forest boundary. As they watched, more appeared near Hogsmeade Station and along the lake's far shore. They're surrounding us, Neville observed. Classic siege positioning. Exactly as Snape predicted, Harry agreed. Which means his intelligence about their main thrust points is probably accurate too. Ron joined them, wiping potion ingredients from his hands. Just finished helping Slughorn distribute the combat kits. Everyone 5th year and up gets strengthening solution, shield potion, and essence of Dibney. Good. What about the special project? Harry asked quietly. Hermione's putting final touches on it now. Ron glanced around to ensure privacy. 50 enchanted galleons that can temporarily disrupt magic in a 3-meter radius. One-time use, but should create enough chaos to escape bad situations. Brilliant, Harry said. Make sure every team leader gets at least 2. Luna appeared beside them, seemingly out of nowhere. The Nargles are very agitated near the astronomy tower, she announced. I believe invisible scouts are testing our interior defenses. Harry had learned to trust Luna's unconventional warnings. Ron, take a security team and sweep the tower. Full reveal charms every 2 meters. As Ron departed, Harry returned his attention to the model. The castle showed no internal breaches yet, but Luna's intuition had proven reliable too many times to ignore. Time to check the heart of Hogwarts, he decided. Find Hermione and Professor Dumbledore. We need to understand this mechanism before Voldemort arrives. 20 minutes later, Harry led a small group, Dumbledore, Hermione, McGonagall, and Snape, into the Founder's chamber beneath the Great Hall. The circular room looked much as it had during Harry's charter broadcast, but with one critical difference: a previously hidden archway now glowed at the far side, revealing a passage deeper into Hogwarts Foundation. The castle revealed this to me 2 days ago, Harry explained. It leads to the heart, the magical core where the Founders combined their power to create Hogwarts. Remarkable, Dumbledore breathed, examining the archway's intricate runic inscriptions. These are protection wards of extraordinary complexity. They permit passage only to those accepted by the castle itself, Harry confirmed. Which apparently includes everyone here. They proceeded down the sloping passage, wands illuminating ancient stone walls inscribed with the history of Hogwarts creation. Hermione slowed repeatedly, fascinated by the historical record, until McGonagall gently urged her forward. The passage opened into a vast circular chamber with a domed ceiling displaying a magical representation of the cosmos. At the center stood a raised platform containing 4 pedestals arranged in a square. Each pedestal held a crystalline object shaped to represent a house emblem: lion, eagle, badger, and serpent, glowing with inner light. The Founders' focus stones, Dumbledore identified them. Through which they channeled their combined magic to create the castle. But Harry's attention was drawn to a fifth pedestal at the center of the square, taller than the others and topped with a basin similar to a pensieve, though the liquid within pulsed with golden rather than silver light. "This is the purification mechanism," he said, approaching it carefully. "The castle showed me how it works, but not in detail. Something about extracting magical contamination." Snape moved closer, his expertise in dark magic detection engaging. "It appears designed to separate foreign magical elements from a compatible host. Similar to certain potion distillation processes, but vastly more powerful. And potentially dangerous," McGonagall added, concern evident in her voice. "Potter, we should thoroughly research this before." A sudden tremor shook the chamber, dust falling from the ancient ceiling. Above them, somewhere in the castle proper, an alarm began to sound. "They're starting early," Harry said, already moving toward the exit. "We'll have to investigate this mechanism later." "Harry, wait," Dumbledore called. "We may not get another chance before the battle. If Tom breaks through, then we'll deal with that when it happens," Harry cut him off. "Right now, students need protecting." They hurried back through the passage and up to the Great Hall, where controlled chaos had erupted. Prefects were directing students to defensive positions while professors cast additional reinforcement charms on the castle's vulnerable points. The 3D model now showed dozens of red dots converging on the outer boundaries. Multiple breach attempts at the main gates and boathouse, Neville reported as they arrived. Dementors leading at the forest edge. Giants approaching from the mountains. Earlier than expected, Dumbledore observed grimly. "Tom must have learned about the evacuation and decided to strike before we could complete preparations." Harry took command naturally, the past months of leadership flowing through him. "Activate Defense Protocol 2. Patronus teams to the forest boundary. Blasting squads to the boathouse approach. Ron, take your flyers and begin aerial reconnaissance. Stay within the ward boundary, but I want eyes on their positions." As defenders rushed to their assignments, Harry felt the castle's magic surge around him, responsive, alert, ready to be directed. Through their connection, he sensed the ward lines holding strong against initial probes, but with concerning pressure points developing where sustained attacks focused. "The wards will hold for now," he told the remaining leaders. "But they're testing systematically, looking for weak points. Once found, they'll concentrate power there." "Classic siege approach," Dumbledore agreed. "We should prepare for the possibility of targeted breakthroughs rather than full ward collapse." Harry nodded. Professor McGonagall, initiate moving defenses, suits of armor and stone guardians positioned near likely breach points. Professor Flitwick, time to activate the corridor shield matrices. The diminutive charms professor nodded and hurried off, while McGonagall began the complex incantation that would bring Hogwarts' non-living defenders to full alert. "Severus," Dumbledore turned to the dark-haired professor, "your insight into Tom's strategy would be invaluable on the western approach. He's likely to direct his elite forces there." "I'm aware," Snape replied coldly. "I've already positioned our strongest countermeasures accordingly." "Actually," Harry interrupted, "I need Professor Snape at the astronomy tower. The wards there show unusual stress patterns consistent with targeted dark magic." Snape nodded sharply. "As you wish." As he departed, Dumbledore gave Harry a measuring look. "You're deliberately keeping Severus away from the western approach. May I ask why?" "Because that's where Voldemort will be looking for him," Harry replied. "And I'd rather not have one of our key defenders distracted by personal vendettas." "Wise," Dumbledore acknowledged. "Where do you want me?" "With me at the central ward stone," Harry decided. "If they breach anywhere, we'll need to respond quickly with maximum magical power." Another tremor shook the castle, stronger than the first. Outside, the winter sky had darkened prematurely, unnatural storm clouds gathering above the forbidden forest. "Weather manipulation," Hermione noted. "They're trying to disrupt the astronomical alignment that strengthens the wards." "It won't work," Harry said confidently. "The wards are anchored to the castle's core magic, not surface conditions. A silver Patronus, Ron's terrier, bounded into the hall. Giants breaking through at the forest edge. Dementors following. First defensive line engaged. Harry turned to the remaining students in the Great Hall. This is it. Remember your training. Protect each other first, the castle second. No heroics, no solo missions. He looked at each determined face. Hogwarts stands with you. As they moved to their positions, Harry felt the castle's magic surge again, stronger, more focused. Through the stone beneath his feet, he sensed the ancient heartbeat of Hogwarts responding to the threat. Somewhere deep below, the Founder's Guardians stirred in their long sleep, awareness beginning to flicker. It's beginning, he told Dumbledore as they hurried toward the central ward chamber. The real test of everything we've built here. Indeed. The old wizard's eyes gleamed with something like pride. And whatever happens next, Harry, know that you've already accomplished what I never could, you've made Hogwarts truly whole again. The central ward chamber occupied a small tower overlooking the main courtyard, its circular walls lined with crystalline panels that displayed the status of Hogwarts' defensive magic. As Harry and Dumbledore entered, the displays pulsed with amber warnings, the ward still intact but under increasing pressure. They're attacking methodically, Dumbledore observed, studying the patterns. Testing for resonant frequencies that might disrupt the underlying matrix. Standard ward-breaking technique, Harry agreed. But they don't understand how the restored wards function. They're not just layered barriers like modern protections, they're organically linked to the castle itself. Through his connection with Hogwarts, Harry could feel the attacks more directly, like pressure against his own skin, uncomfortable but not yet painful. He placed his hands on the central ward stone, a massive crystal embedded in the floor, and channeled his magic into strengthening the most stressed sections. Impressive, Dumbledore murmured, watching the ward displays shift from amber to green where Harry directed his focus. Your connection with the castle has deepened beyond what I thought possible. It grows stronger the more I work with it, Harry explained. Hogwarts wants to be protected, it just needed someone willing to listen. A silver lynx Patronus, Kingsley's, materialized in the chamber. Death Eaters breached outer boundary near Hogsmeade Station. Engaged with defenders. Need reinforcement. Harry closed his eyes briefly, sensing through the castle where the breach had occurred. They've penetrated the outermost ward but not the secondary defenses. It's a probing attack, not the main thrust. Shall I go? Dumbledore offered. No. Neville's team can handle it. Harry sent his own Patronus with instructions, then refocused on the ward stone. They want to draw our strength away from the main defenses. A strategy Tom favors, Dumbledore agreed. Divide attention, then strike where least expected. More reports arrived as the siege intensified, giants hurling boulders against the northern walls, Dementors swarming above the Quidditch pitch, held back only by a rotating team of Patronus casters, Acromantula emerging from the forest in numbers that confirmed Luna's intelligence about their recruitment. They're still testing, Harry noted after an hour of sustained attacks. Voldemort hasn't shown himself yet. He's waiting for the solstice alignment, Dumbledore confirmed. When the astronomical power peaks. That's when he'll attempt the main breach. Harry checked his watch, just over 7 hours until the winter solstice reached its zenith. 7 hours of escalating attacks designed to wear down defenders and identify vulnerabilities. We need to rotate our teams, he decided. No defender stands more than 2 hours without rest. And we should position our reserves near the Great Hall, central location to respond to any breakthrough. The battle settled into a grim pattern. Attack waves crashed against Hogwarts defenses like storm-driven seas against a cliff face, powerful, relentless, but not yet overwhelming. Defenders responded with disciplined coordination, shifting to meet each new threat while maintaining core positions. Harry divided his time between the ward chamber and critical defense points, his connection with the castle allowing him to sense developing threats before they fully materialized. Dumbledore moved between positions as needed, his immense magical power turning the tide of several particularly fierce engagements. 4 hours into the siege, Harry joined Ron on the battlements overlooking the main gates, where a team of 6th and 7th years maintained shield charms against intermittent curse fire from concealed positions in Hogsmeade. "How are we holding up?" Harry asked, ducking as a blasting curse exploded against the magical barrier 50 feet ahead. "Better than expected," Ron replied, his tactical mind analyzing the situation. "They've tested every approach except direct assault, which means they haven't found a vulnerability yet." "Or they're saving their strength for the main event," Harry suggested. "That too." Ron wiped sweat from his forehead despite the winter chill. "Hermione's monitoring their movement patterns from the astronomy tower. She thinks they're positioning for a 3-pronged attack when the time comes: main gates, forest edge, and somewhere along the eastern wall." "The east?" Harry frowned. "That's our strongest point structurally." "Exactly why it's suspicious. Too many enemy units gathering there for it to be a feint, not enough for a serious assault." Ron's eyes narrowed. "Something's off about it." Harry's connection with the castle suddenly flared with warning. "The boathouse. They're tunneling under the ward line." Even as he spoke, a distant explosion shook the foundations, and alarms blared throughout the castle. The 3D model in Harry's mind showed a breach at the lake's edge, magical signatures pouring through a tunnel that hadn't existed minutes before. "Underground approach," Ron realized. While we were watching the surface. They sprinted toward the breach point, gathering defenders along the way. By the time they reached the wide corridor leading to the boathouse stairs, sounds of battle already echoed from below, spellfire and shouts indicating the first defense line was engaged. Neville's team was stationed nearby, Ron panted as they ran. They should have intercepted. They rounded the corner to find chaos. The narrow passage to the boathouse had been blasted open, doubled in size to allow multiple attackers to enter simultaneously. Neville's defenders were fighting desperately, maintaining a defensive line 20 yards back from the breach. Beyond them, dark-robed figures poured into the castle, Death Eaters in full battle regalia, masks gleaming in the torchlight. "Shields up!" Harry commanded as they joined the defense. Blasting Pattern 3. The student defenders responded with practiced precision, alternating shield charms and offensive spells in the coordinated pattern they'd drilled for weeks. The Death Eater advance faltered momentarily under the organized response. "They're inside the wards now," Harry called to Ron over the din of battle. "Castle defenses active." As if responding to his words, the very structure of Hogwarts joined the fight. Stone blocks detached from the ceiling, dropping precisely onto advancing enemies. Suits of armor charged from connecting corridors, engaging Death Eaters with medieval weapons enchanted to combat dark magic. "Potter," a familiar sneering voice called from the enemy ranks. "The Dark Lord sends his regards." Lucius Malfoy stepped forward, his silver mask pushed up to reveal his contemptuous expression. "Your little revolution ends tonight. Surrender the castle now, and some might be spared." "Interesting offer," Harry replied, maintaining his shield against the continuing assault. "Especially coming from someone whose son and wife are under my protection." Fury flashed across Malfoy's aristocratic features. "You dare speak of my family? After turning them against their lord, their proper allegiance?" "I offered them safety," Harry countered. "Something you failed to do when you pledged them to a madman." Malfoy's response was a vicious slashing curse that fractured Harry's shield and would have connected if Ron hadn't yanked him sideways at the last second. The battle intensified, coordination breaking down into individual duels as more Death Eaters pushed through the breach. Harry found himself facing 2 opponents simultaneously, Lucius Malfoy and a masked figure whose spell style suggested Yaxley. Behind them, a continued stream of dark wizards poured into the corridor. "We can't hold them here," Ron shouted, bleeding from a cut on his cheek as he dueled a massive Death Eater Harry didn't recognize. "Too many entry points." Harry made a split-second decision. Through his connection with Hogwarts, he sent a command, not to the defenders, but to the castle itself. The response was immediate and dramatic. The ancient stones around the breach point groaned, then shifted. Massive blocks that had stood for centuries suddenly realigned, the passage beginning to close like a stone mouth. Death Eaters caught in the narrowing gap scrambled to escape, some making it through while others retreated back toward the boathouse. "Fall back to position 2. Harry ordered the defenders. Controlled retreat. As they withdrew down the corridor, the breach sealed completely with a reverberating boom. The castle had sacrificed the boathouse access entirely, permanently closing that entry point at Harry's direction. "That won't hold them forever," Neville panted as they regrouped at the next defensive line. "They've got ward breakers and curse specialists. They'll find another way in." "But it buys us time," Harry replied. "And channels them where we expect." A silver otter Patronus, Hermione's, bounded toward them. Eastern wall breached. Multiple enemies inside near the greenhouses. Sprout's defenses engaged but overwhelmed. "Ron, take half this team to reinforce the greenhouse approach," Harry directed. "Neville, secure this position with the remainder. I need to check the ward chamber, see what other weaknesses they're targeting." As they separated, Harry felt the castle's warning intensify. Not just about the current breaches, but something larger building. Through their connection, he sensed a massive concentration of dark magic gathering beyond the main gates, power beyond what the Death Eaters alone could generate. Voldemort had arrived. The ward chamber displayed a castle under siege. Multiple sections glowed red, indicating active fighting, while others pulsed amber with strained defenses. Dumbledore stood at the central ward stone, his good hand tracing patterns across its surface as he reinforced critical sections. "Tom has joined the battle," he said without turning as Harry entered. "I can feel his magical signature gathering strength near the main entrance." "2 breaches already," Harry reported. "Boathouse sealed but eastern wall compromised. Defenders engaged but outnumbered." "Merely the prelude," Dumbledore replied grimly. "The solstice alignment peaks in 53 minutes. That's when he'll attempt his master stroke." Harry joined him at the ward stone, adding his power to the defenses. Through their combined effort, the eastern breach stabilized, not sealed, but contained to prevent further enemy advance. "He'll target the main gates," Harry predicted. "Classic symbolism, the front door, the direct approach. His pride demands it." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed. "But not without preparation. The breaches are designed to divide our attention and resources, making the primary target more vulnerable." A rumble shook the castle, deeper and more ominous than previous tremors. Through his connection, Harry felt something he hadn't before, a systematic attack on the very foundation of Hogwarts magic. Not just breaching wards, but attempting to corrupt the castle's core power. "He's targeting the heart," Harry realized with sudden clarity. "The breaches are distractions. His real goal is the Founder's Chamber and the magical core." Dumbledore's expression sharpened. "For what purpose? Even Tom couldn't hope to control Hogwarts against its rightful heir." "Not control. Corrupt." The pieces fell into place in Harry's mind. If he can't have Hogwarts, he'll try to poison it, turn the castle's magic dark, make it uninhabitable for future generations. A final revenge. That would require access to the heart itself, Dumbledore pointed out. "Which only you can grant. Or force, with enough power at the right moment." Harry checked his watch again. The solstice alignment. That's why he waited for it, maximum magical potency to override the Founder's protections. Another tremor, stronger still. The ward displays flickered, then stabilized. Beyond the chamber windows, unnatural darkness gathered despite being mid-afternoon. A chill permeated the castle that had nothing to do with winter weather, the distinctive cold of Dementor presence, but magnified hundredfold. "He's summoning them all," Dumbledore said quietly. "Every Dementor in Britain, concentrating their power with his." Harry's galleon burned hot in his pocket, the emergency signal from Ron or Hermione. He pulled it out to find a simple message: Main Hall. Now. They're coming. Time to meet them head-on, Harry decided. The castle needs us at the Great Hall. They raced through corridors where pitched battles continued between defenders and Death Eaters who had breached various entry points. The castle itself fought alongside its inhabitants, staircases redirecting to block enemy advances, passages sealing to protect retreating students, suits of armor engaging dark wizards with tireless precision. The Great Hall had transformed into a command center and field hospital combined. Injured defenders lined one wall, tended by Madame Pomfrey and her student assistants. The central area held the expanded 3D model showing enemy positions throughout the grounds and castle. And at the main doors, a reinforced barricade had been established, the last defense before the heart of Hogwarts. Ron and Hermione rushed to meet them, both showing signs of battle but still standing strong. "They've broken through multiple points," Hermione reported briskly. "But we've contained most advances. The real problem is, out there," Ron finished, pointing toward the main doors. "You know who himself with what looks like his entire inner circle. Plus giants, dementors, and something else. Something big. How long until they attack?" Harry asked, moving to the barricade where defenders peered through narrow openings at the gathering forces. "Minutes," Neville answered, joining them with Luna at his side. Both looked battle-worn but determined. "They're arranging something in the courtyard. Looks like ritual components." Harry peered through the gap. In the courtyard beyond, a nightmarish assembly had formed. Death Eaters stood in concentric circles around a central figure in flowing black robes, Voldemort, his snake-like face turned toward the castle with calculating malice. Behind them loomed giants wielding massive clubs and stone hammers. Above, hundreds of Dementors swirled in a vortex of soul-chilling darkness. But most disturbing was the object being constructed at the center of their formation, a massive dark crystal mounted on a silver frame, oriented toward Hogwarts' main doors like an obsidian cannon. A focus stone, Dumbledore identified it. Designed to channel combined magic into a concentrated beam. With the solstice power and all those magical signatures feeding it. It could breach the main doors even with all our defenses, Harry concluded. We need to destroy it before they activate it. Direct assault would be suicide, McGonagall stated, joining their council. They've positioned their strongest fighters in a protective formation specifically to prevent that. Harry studied the enemy arrangement, mind racing through options. The castle hummed in his consciousness, offering impressions rather than concrete suggestions, a sense of hidden resources, of deeper magic yet untapped. "The Founder's Guardians," he said suddenly. "It's time to wake them." "Harry, we don't fully understand their capabilities or limitations," Hermione cautioned. "The records are incomplete, because they were never meant to be controlled through records," Harry replied. "They respond directly to the castle's need and the heir's intent." He looked around at his closest allies. "I need to return to the heart of Hogwarts. The rest of you, maintain the barricade for as long as possible. Buy me 15 minutes. What exactly are you planning?" Dumbledore asked, his blue eyes intent. "To remind Voldemort who really controls Hogwarts," Harry answered. "Ron, Hermione, you're with me. Neville, Luna, coordinate the remaining defenders. Professor McGonagall, Professor Dumbledore, the barricade is yours." Outside, a horn sounded, the signal for Voldemort's forces to begin their final assault. The massive crystal focus stone glowed with gathering power, fed by the Dark Lord and his followers. "Hurry," Dumbledore urged. "We'll hold as long as we can." Harry, Ron and Hermione raced through the castle toward the Founder's chamber, the sounds of renewed battle echoing behind them. The assault had begun on all fronts simultaneously, a final, coordinated push to overwhelm Hogwarts' defenses at the moment of solstice alignment. "What exactly are these guardians supposed to do?" Ron asked as they descended the spiral staircase to the chamber beneath the Great Hall. "They're Hogwarts' last defense," Harry explained. Magical constructs embodying the Founder's combined power, designed to protect the school when all other measures fail. But you're not just activating them for defense, are you? Hermione pressed. You have something specific in mind. Harry nodded as they entered the Founder's chamber. The purification mechanism, the one Dumbledore mentioned for removing Voldemort's soul fragment. It's not just for individuals. Originally, it was created to cleanse the entire castle of dark magic. I'm going to use it to turn Voldemort's attack back on him. The central passage to the heart of Hogwarts opened at Harry's approach, the castle recognizing his intent. They hurried through, descending deeper beneath the school until they reached the vast circular chamber with its cosmic ceiling and 5 pedestals. Those must be the Guardians. Ron pointed to 4 alcoves surrounding the chamber, previously unnoticed. Within each alcove stood a towering figure, twice human height, composed of what appeared to be living stone infused with magical energy. One bore the head of a lion, another an eagle, the third a badger, and the fourth a serpent. All 4 remained motionless, as they had for centuries, awaiting the call to defend Hogwarts in its greatest need. How do we wake them? Hermione asked, approaching the nearest figure cautiously. We don't, Harry replied, moving to the central pedestal with its golden basin. They respond to the castle itself, which means. He placed both hands on the basin's edge, connecting deeply with Hogwarts' core magic. The connection flowed both ways, Harry's awareness expanding to encompass the entire castle while Hogwarts' ancient consciousness rose to meet his. Through this merged perspective, he witnessed the battle in its entirety, Death Eaters breaching lower levels, giants hammering at exterior walls, Dementors swarming above towers, and at the main entrance, Voldemort channeling unnatural power into the focus stone, seconds away from launching his assault on the castle's heart. Harry directed his intent through the connection, not with words, but with pure magical will. Hogwarts is threatened at its core. The Founder's guardians are needed. Awaken. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The 4 crystal emblems on the surrounding pedestals flared with blinding light, lion, eagle, badger, serpent, each channeling its founder's essence into the corresponding guardian. The stone figures shuddered, then stepped forward in perfect unison, ancient magic animating their massive forms. Bloody hell, Ron whispered as the guardians moved toward Harry, their stone faces somehow expressing intelligence and purpose. The lion-headed guardian spoke first, its voice resonating not through air but directly in their minds. The air calls. Hogwarts is threatened. We answer. Voldemort seeks to corrupt the castle's magic, Harry explained, maintaining his connection with the basin. He's channeling dark power through a focus stone to penetrate our defenses and poison the heart. The Eagle Guardian's eyes glowed with analytical intensity. We perceive the attack pattern. Direct confrontation is suboptimal. Recommend strategic counter-channeling. Exactly, Harry agreed. Can you use this, he indicated the golden basin, to redirect his own magic against him? The Badger Guardian stepped forward, placing a massive stone hand beside Harry's on the basin's rim. The purification mechanism was designed for this purpose. To cleanse corruption by reflecting it to its source. But the cost is high. The connection must be complete. What connection? Hermione asked sharply. Harry, what aren't they saying? The Serpent Guardian turned its stone face toward her. The air must serve as conduit. His connection to both Hogwarts and the Dark One makes this possible. But the strain may be significant. You'll be channeling Voldemort's attack through yourself, Hermione realized, horror dawning on her face. Harry, that could kill you. It could, Harry acknowledged. But it might also solve 2 problems at once. If the purification mechanism can extract Voldemort's soul fragment from me while redirecting his attack. That's why you really came down here, Ron said quietly. Not just to activate the Guardians. Harry met his friend's worried gazes. Dumbledore was right about one thing, as long as I carry a piece of Voldemort, he can't truly die. This might be our only chance to end it completely. There must be another way, Hermione insisted. One that doesn't risk your life. The castle shuddered violently, stone dust falling from the ancient ceiling. Through their connection, Harry felt Voldemort's attack intensify, the dark energy beam from the focus stone beginning to penetrate the main doors despite all defensive enchantments. "We're out of time," he said grimly. "The Guardians can help defend the castle, but this is something only I can do." He squeezed Hermione's hand briefly. "I don't plan on dying today. But Hogwarts must survive, whatever happens to me." The Lion Guardian's stone mane bristled with energy. "The heir has chosen. We will defend while he completes the purification. Go, protectors of Hogwarts. Your fellow defenders need you above." "We're not leaving Harry," Ron stated flatly. "You have to," Harry countered. "The main defense needs coordination. The DA needs leadership. Please, trust me to do this part." Hermione's eyes filled with tears, but her expression hardened with reluctant acceptance. "You'd better survive this, Harry Potter. Or I'll never forgive you." Noted, Harry managed a small smile. "Now go. The Guardians will show themselves momentarily. Be ready to coordinate with them." With final glances of concern, Ron and Hermione departed, following the Badger Guardian who would lead them back to the upper levels. The remaining 3 Guardians positioned themselves around Harry and the central basin. "How do we begin?" Harry asked. The Eagle Guardian's eyes gleamed with ancient knowledge. "Immerse yourself in the purification medium. Your intent must be threefold: connection to Hogwarts, rejection of the soul fragment, and reflection of the dark energy. The mechanism will do the rest." Harry stared into the swirling golden liquid. Through his connection with the castle, he felt Voldemort's attack reaching critical intensity, the dark beam now burning through the Great Hall's massive doors, seconds from breaching the final barrier before the castle's heart. With a deep breath, Harry plunged his hands into the golden substance. Immediately, magic unlike anything he'd experienced surged through him, pure, ancient, and overwhelmingly powerful. His consciousness expanded beyond physical limitations, encompassing every stone and spell of Hogwarts while simultaneously connecting to the dark power attempting to invade. Through this expanded awareness, Harry could perceive Voldemort directly, not just his physical presence commanding the attack, but his magical essence. The Dark Lord stood at the center of a maelstrom of corrupted power, channeling not just his own considerable magic but the combined darkness of his followers, the Dementor's soul-chilling energy, and the Solstice Alignment's natural force. And in that moment of perfect magical clarity, Harry could also feel the fragment of Voldemort's soul embedded within himself, a parasitic presence that had influenced him since infancy, separate yet connected to his own being. Following the Guardian's guidance, Harry focused his threefold intent, his unbreakable bond with Hogwarts, his absolute rejection of Voldemort's soul fragment, and his determination to reflect the dark attack back to its source. The golden liquid responded, rising from the basin to envelop him completely in a cocoon of purifying magic. The pain was immediate and excruciating, like being torn apart at a molecular level while simultaneously burned from within. The mechanism wasn't gentle, it worked by forcibly separating magical essences that had become intertwined. Harry's consciousness nearly fractured under the strain, held together only by his connection to Hogwarts itself. Above, in the Great Hall, the final barrier failed. Voldemort's dark energy beam penetrated fully, boring through floor and foundation toward the castle's heart. At that exact moment, the Solstice Alignment reached its zenith, astronomical power amplifying all magic to its peak potential. Harry became the conduit where all these forces converged: Hogwarts' ancient protection, Voldemort's corrupting attack, and the purification mechanism separating power. Within the golden cocoon, he felt the Horcrux fragment being ripped from his very soul, his screams echoing through the chamber as the Guardians maintained the process despite his agony. The Serpent Guardian's voice penetrated his pain: "The separation nears completion. Prepare for the reflection." With his last coherent thought, Harry focused on turning Voldemort's attack back upon itself, redirecting the massive dark energy beam through the newly purified channel the mechanism had created. The Guardians channeled their power through him, transforming the castle's defensive magic into an offensive force for the first time in its history. In the courtyard above, Voldemort's triumph turned to confusion as the dark beam he controlled suddenly fluctuated. The focus stone's obsidian surface cracked, then shattered as pure golden light erupted from within, the redirected energy now flowing backward through the magical connection. "What is this?" the Dark Lord demanded as the energy backlash struck him physically, lifting him from the ground in a corona of rebounding magic. His Death Eaters scattered in panic as the golden light expanded outward from their master, engulfing those nearest in the same purifying fire that now consumed Voldemort himself. Dementors shrieked and fled as the light touched them, their darkness antithetical to the purified magic now flooding the courtyard. Deep below, Harry collapsed as the connection finally broke, the golden liquid receding back into the basin. On the chamber floor beside him lay a writhing, smoking fragment of darkness, the piece of Voldemort's soul extracted from his body. The Eagle Guardian moved with surprising swiftness, capturing the fragment in a crystalline container before it could seek another host. "Is it over?" Harry gasped, every nerve ending still screaming from the magical trauma. "The purification is complete," the Lion Guardian confirmed. "The Dark One's connection to you is severed. But above, the battle continues." Indeed, through his weakened but intact bond with Hogwarts, Harry could sense ongoing fighting throughout the castle. While the central attack had been repelled catastrophically for Voldemort, his forces still breached multiple points, and defenders fought desperately to contain them. "Help me up," Harry commanded, struggling to his feet. "I need to get back. The other Guardians, they need to join the defense now." "We shall convey you," the Badger Guardian decided, carefully lifting Harry in stone arms. "The purification has succeeded, but at great cost to your magical reserves. Recovery will require time." "Time we don't have," Harry muttered as the Guardians carried him swiftly through the passage back toward the upper levels. "Voldemort may be injured, but his followers will continue the attack." The scene that greeted them upon emerging into the Great Hall confirmed Harry's fears. The massive doors had been destroyed completely, leaving the hall exposed to the courtyard beyond. Defenders had established a new barricade using overturned tables and magical shields, from behind which they exchanged spell fire with Death Eaters who pressed forward despite their master's defeat. Giants roared from the courtyard, hurling massive stones that shattered against Dumbledore's hastily erected protective dome covering the hall's exposed entrance. The aged wizard stood at the center of the defensive line, his power visibly straining against the onslaught. "Harry!" Hermione's voice cut through the chaos as she spotted him being carried by the Badger Guardian. "What happened?" "I'm alive," he assured her as the Guardian set him carefully on his feet. "The soul fragment is gone." "And Voldemort?" "Disappeared in an explosion of light," Ron reported, hurrying over. "Took out half his inner circle with him. The rest are fighting like cornered animals now, more desperate than ever." Harry surveyed the battle with new clarity, his connection with the castle providing tactical awareness despite his magical exhaustion. "The Guardians need to join the defense. Spread them across the 4 main breach points." At his command, the massive stone figures moved into position, the Lion Guardian charging toward the main entrance to confront the giants directly, the Eagle taking flight to address aerial threats, the Badger heading toward the eastern breach where Death Eaters continued pouring in, and the Serpent slithering with surprising speed toward the dungeons where fighting had spread. "Did it work completely?" Hermione asked quietly, supporting Harry as his legs threatened to buckle. "The Horcrux extraction?" "Yes," Harry confirmed, touching his scar which, for the first time in memory, felt like nothing more than an old wound. "But Voldemort isn't dead, not completely. The reflected energy injured him severely, maybe destroyed his current body, but without destroying all Horcruxes. He'll find a way back eventually," Dumbledore confirmed, joining them during a momentary lull in the assault. The old wizard looked utterly spent, his blackened hand hanging uselessly at his side while his good one trembled with exhaustion. "But not today. And not soon, if my understanding of magical backlash is correct." A tremendous roar shook the great hall as the Lion Guardian engaged the giants directly, its stone form impervious to their clubs while its magical attacks drove them backward step by massive step. Throughout the castle, the tide began to turn as the Guardian's intervention bolstered the defenders' courage and effectiveness. We can win this, Harry realized, drawing strength from the castle itself to remain standing. They expected to face students and teachers, not the embodied power of the founders. What do you need us to do? Neville asked, arriving with Luna from their defensive position, both looking battered but determined. Coordinate with the Guardians, Harry directed. They respond to intent rather than specific commands. Show them where they're needed most. As his friends dispersed to their assignments, Harry turned to Dumbledore. The remaining Horcruxes, you said you had information about them? Nagini is certainly one, Dumbledore confirmed. I believe she was evacuated when Tom fell. The others, Hufflepuff's Cup and something of Ravenclaw's, remain hidden. But without their master to protect them. We'll find them, Harry promised. After we secure Hogwarts. The battle raged for another hour, gradually shifting from invasion to retreat as Death Eater forces recognized their disadvantage without Voldemort's leadership and against the unexpected power of the Guardians. The giants withdrew first, their small minds easily convinced to abandon a losing fight once their handlers fell. The remaining dark wizards fought a rearguard action, covering their withdrawal while retrieving as many fallen comrades as possible. By sunset, Hogwarts stood battered but undefeated. The castle had suffered significant structural damage, entire sections of wall collapsed, towers partially destroyed, windows shattered throughout. Yet its core magic remained intact, its heart unpoisoned by Voldemort's attempt to corrupt it from within. Defenders gathered in the damaged Great Hall for triage and accounting. The cost had been high, 3 students killed despite all precautions, 24 seriously injured, and Professor Flitwick in critical condition after dueling 5 Death Eaters simultaneously to protect trapped Ravenclaws. 27 confirmed enemy casualties, Ron reported grimly as the Leadership Council assembled near the staff table, the only furniture still standing in the devastated hall. Another 40 injured by our count. No confirmed sighting of you-know-who since the explosion, but Bellatrix Lestrange was seen organizing their retreat, so they still have command structure. And our losses? Harry asked quietly. Colin Creevey, Hermione said, voice breaking slightly. He slipped away from the evacuation, came back to fight. Terry Boot and Lisa Turpin from Ravenclaw. Harry closed his eyes briefly, each name a weight on his conscience despite knowing they had prepared as thoroughly as possible. The injured? Madame Pomfrey says most will recover fully. Professor Flitwick, it's too soon to tell. Hermione consulted her notes. The castle itself suffered major damage to approximately 30% of its structure. The Guardians are currently stabilizing critical areas to prevent further collapse. We'll rebuild, Harry said with quiet determination. Stronger than before. The 4 stone Guardians had returned to the Great Hall, taking positions at the corners where they stood vigilant despite the battle's end. Their presence seemed to comfort the wounded and exhausted defenders, a physical reminder that Hogwarts' deepest protections had finally awakened. What happens now? Neville asked the question on everyone's mind. Voldemort will return eventually. The Ministry still doesn't acknowledge our independence. And the school. He gestured at the devastation around them. We rebuild, Harry repeated. We learn from today. We prepare for tomorrow. He straightened despite his exhaustion, drawing strength from the castle's enduring magic. Hogwarts has stood for 1,000 years. It will stand for 1,000 more. Dumbledore, sitting quietly until now, nodded with approval. The Founders would be proud of what you've accomplished here, Harry. Not just in battle, but in restoration, bringing the school back to its original purpose, uniting the houses, balancing security with education. We did it together, Harry corrected him, including all his friends and allies in his gaze. Every student who stayed to fight. Every professor who put protection above politics. Everyone who believed Hogwarts could be better. As night fell fully, the enchanted ceiling, remarkably still functioning despite battle damage, displayed a blanket of stars above them. The winter solstice had passed, the shortest day giving way to incrementally lengthening light. Symbolically fitting, Harry thought, for a victory that felt like the turning of a long, dark season. McGonagall approached from where she'd been organizing sleeping arrangements for students whose dormitories had been damaged. "Potter, the Minister for Magic is at the Boundary. He's requesting entry to assess the situation." Harry exchanged glances with his advisors. Alone? With a delegation of 5, including Percy Weasley and Dolores Umbridge. Ron snorted. "Vultures circling now that the fighting's done." "Let them come," Harry decided. "But only the minister himself passes the outer ward line. The others wait at the gate. And make it clear this is a courtesy, not a right." As McGonagall left to convey these terms, Hermione gave Harry a searching look. "Are you sure that's wise? Scrimgeour will try to reassert ministry control now that the crisis appears over." "Let him try," Harry said with quiet confidence. The battle today wasn't just against Voldemort, it was for Hogwarts' soul. For what this place is meant to be. He looked around at the students helping each other, the houses mixed without regard to color or crest, unified in purpose despite their injuries. "I think we've already won that fight." "And the war against you-know-who?" Ron asked. "Continues," Harry acknowledged. "But on our terms now. Without his soul fragment inside me. Without his ability to threaten Hogwarts directly." He touched his scar, just a lightning-shaped mark now, no longer a burning connection to darkness. "For the first time, I feel like we're truly ahead of him instead of just reacting." The Badger Guardian approached, its stone face somehow conveying satisfaction despite its immobile features. "The castle is stabilized. Critical structures reinforced. Reconstruction can begin with the dawn." "Thank you," Harry said sincerely. "Will you and the others stay awakened now? Or return to your rest until needed again?" "We remain while threat persists," the Guardian replied. "When Hogwarts stands secure in lasting peace, we shall return to our vigil. But that day is not yet come." "No," Harry agreed. "But it's closer than it was yesterday." Minister Scrimgeour arrived an hour later, looking distinctly uncomfortable as he was escorted through the battle-scarred grounds by Professor McGonagall. The contrast between his pristine official robes and the debris-strewn path emphasized his late arrival to a fight others had won. Harry met him at the entrance to the Great Hall, deliberately chosen to showcase both the damage Hogwarts had sustained and the resilience of its inhabitants. Students and staff worked together on repairs, healing, and comfort, the active heart of a school that refused to be defeated. "Mr. Potter," Scrimgeour began stiffly. "The Ministry has received reports of a major magical disturbance centered on Hogwarts. As Minister, I'm here to assess." "You're here," Harry interrupted calmly, "because Voldemort attacked Hogwarts with his entire force, was defeated, and you want to ensure you're not blamed for failing to provide assistance." Scrimgeour's lion-like features tightened. "That's an unfair characterization of, Minister," Harry cut him off again. 3 students died today. Dozens more were injured. The castle itself nearly fell to the darkest wizard of our time. All while the Ministry stood aside. His voice remained level but carried throughout the hall. "So forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned with political niceties right now." Surprisingly, Scrimgeour didn't respond with anger. Instead, he surveyed the scene with what appeared to be genuine regret. "You're right, of course. Politics kept us from acting when we should have." He met Harry's gaze directly. "I made a mistake. The Ministry made a mistake." The admission caught Harry off guard. He'd expected bluster, threats, or attempts to seize control, not acknowledgement of failure. "What happens now?" Harry asked, echoing Neville's earlier question. "Officially, the Ministry recognizes Hogwarts' successful defense against he who must not be named as an act of extraordinary service to Wizarding Britain." Scrimgeour straightened his shoulders. Unofficially, we need to talk about cooperation moving forward. The war isn't over, as I'm sure you realize. Cooperation, Harry repeated. Not control. Recent events have made it abundantly clear that Hogwarts under your stewardship is more secure than it was under Ministry oversight, Scrimgeour admitted. I'm a practical man, Potter. I recognize when a strategy has failed. It was as close to complete capitulation as they were likely to get from the Ministry, an acknowledgement that Hogwarts' independence was now a political reality they would adapt to rather than fight. We'll discuss cooperation, Harry agreed. After we've tended our wounded and honored our dead. Not before. Scrimgeour nodded soberly. Fair terms. He hesitated, then added more quietly, for what it's worth, Potter, what you and these students accomplished today, it's given people hope. The first real hope since his return. After the minister departed, Harry found himself drawn to the astronomy tower, one of the few tall structures left relatively intact after the battle. Despite exhaustion pulling at every limb, he needed this moment alone, needed to process everything that had happened in this longest of days. The tower afforded a clear view of Hogwarts and its grounds, the damage starkly visible in the moonlight, collapsed walls, scorched earth where giants had trampled, the boathouse entirely gone. Yet even in ruins, the castle retained its essential character, proud, ancient, enduring. Through his connection, Harry felt its magic already beginning the slow work of self-repair, stones yearning to return to their proper places. Couldn't sleep either, came Hermione's voice as she emerged onto the observation platform. Ron followed close behind, both clearly having searched for him. Just needed a moment, Harry explained as they joined him at the something went wrong with this response, please try again. Bring the next chapter forward. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.